After 14 years, I discovered my son wasn't mine. My wife left for his rich biological dad, but in court, my son revealed a shocking truth about them. It never occurred to me that I would be authoring a piece like this. My entire world has been turned upside down, and I am having a hard time making sense of all that has happened. My guess is that I ought to begin at the very beginning. Before yesterday, I was under the impression that my life was going very well. I am a man who is 35 years old. My wife Rebecca and I have been married for 14 years, and we have a son named Adam who is also 14 years old. When Rebecca got the news that she was expecting, we decided to be married. Although I had no intention of becoming a father, I was delighted to take on the role. I have loved Adam with every single fiber of my being ever since the minute he was born. I witnessed his first steps, his first words, and every other significant moment that has occurred since then. For the purpose of ensuring that we had sufficient funds to provide him with a pleasant life, I worked 2 jobs. Although it was not always simple, I never once grumbled about it. Isn't that what fathers are supposed to do? I made it a point to constantly strive to be the best possible father I could be. In addition to attending all of Adam's soccer games, I assisted him with his homework and gave him instruction on how to ride a bike. Every year throughout the summer, my kid and I would go on camping excursions together, just the 2 of us. In my entire life, those were some of the most memorable moments. Despite the fact that I was not flawless, I always prioritized my family. I went to great lengths to ensure that Adam had everything he required for school, even if it meant there were occasions when I had to skip lunch at work. For his birthday the previous year, I put up money for months in order to purchase him the most recent gaming machine. When he opened it, the expression on his face was worth every extra shift that I worked over and over again. Just like any other relationship, Rebecca and I had our share of highs and lows, but I always assumed that we were content. In the month prior, we celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary by having a delicious meal at our house. Even a card was designed for us by Adam. Our refrigerator still has it, or at least it did before. Yesterday began in the same manner as any other day. First thing in the morning, I went to my first job, and then in the afternoon, I did my second job. I was looking forward to making it home and eating dinner with my family when I finally arrived. Nevertheless, I saw that something was odd when I stepped through the door. The house had an excessively low volume. The majority of the time, Rebecca would be in the kitchen, while Adam would be either watching television or playing video games. On the other hand, there was nothing. There were no sounds, and there were no smells, just quiet. Although I yelled out for them, there was no response to my appeal. I went to Adam's room, thinking that perhaps he was doing so because he was wearing headphones and couldn't hear me, but his room was completely vacant. It was missing a few of his favorite books and some of his favorite outfits. As I made my way to our bedroom, my heart began to beat really fast. After that, I noticed the note that was sitting on the bedside table. Rebecca's handwriting was clear and legible. It was difficult for me to pick it up and begin reading since my hands were shaking. During the time that has passed, the contents of the note have been playing over and over again in my head. Rebecca informed me in writing that she and Adam were going to leave me. That, however, was not even the most terrible aspect. The fact that I am not Adam's biological father was disclosed by her. It was just before we started dating that Rebecca had a brief relationship with another man, as stated in the note. When she discovered that she was pregnant, she took it for granted that it was my child. According to her, she was able to persuade herself that it was genuine because she desired for it to be true. However, suddenly, after a period of 14 years, Adam's biological father had returned to the conversation. As Rebecca wrote, he expressed his want to be a part of their life and she had made the decision to provide him with the opportunity to do so. Adam, she added, deserved to know who his biological father was. It seemed as if I was unable to take a breath. This place was whirling around. I made my way to the bed and sat down, attempting to make sense of what I had just read. What the heck might be going on here? What could Rebecca possibly have done to me, to us? As I continued to read the note, I hoped to find some explanation that would make sense of everything that was going on. Rebecca expressed her regret in writing that she had lied for all of these years. In spite of the fact that she was aware that it was unethical, she stated that she was afraid of losing me and of being a single mother. In her statement, she asserted that Adam's biological father was prosperous and had the ability to provide them with a better life. In her letter, she mentioned that Adam was looking forward to meeting his biological father and beginning a new life. It was that particular region that caused the most pain. For the past 14 hours, I have been attempting to make sense of everything that has happened. I've experienced every feeling that can possibly be imagined, including shock, anger, despair, and betrayal. Over the course of the past day, I have shed more tears than I have in my whole life. Every time I think about Adam, I am reminded of all the times we have spent together, such as when I taught him how to tie his shoelaces, when I stayed up all night to cheer him on during his soccer games, and when I stayed up all night when he had the flu. Were all of those memories a fabrication? I can't help but wonder whether Adam ever had any suspicions about anything. Did he ever get the impression that I wasn't his true father? Did Rebecca ever make a passing reference to it? It seemed like we had a wonderful relationship, but now I'm having second thoughts about everything. I have attempted to contact Rebecca and Adam by calling and messaging them, but both of their phones are currently turned off. I went so far as to drive by Rebecca's parents' house, just in case they were there, but there was no indication that they were there. I have the impression that my entire life has been a lie. Having been a husband and a father for the past 14 years, I have devoted my entire existence to these roles. I've put in a lot of effort to make sure that my family is taken care of, and now, in the blink of an eye, everything that I've paid for is gone. I have no idea what to do at this point. Without them, the house has a certain emptiness about it. Due to the fact that I am unable to concentrate on anything, I have taken a few days off from work. All the while, I keep praying that this is all just a nightmare and that when I wake up, I will find them here. For my family, there is a part of me that wants to fight. Even though Adam is not my biological son, I have been his parent for the past 14 years. Isn't that something that should be considered? However, when I consider the fact that Rebecca has betrayed me, I find myself wondering if I will ever be able to trust her again. The idea of employing a lawyer has crossed my mind, but I have no idea how to get started with the process. As Adam's non-biological father, do I have any rights or responsibilities? Do you think Rebecca could just take him away like this? It is so overwhelming and I feel so lost. I have also contemplated making an effort to locate them, but I am unsure whether or not this is the appropriate course of action. Do I have the authority to interfere with Adam's desire to be with his biological father if he is truly interested in doing so? Not only does the idea of never seeing him again make me feel sick to my stomach, but I also want him to be content. Rebecca has been dishonest with me for all of these years, and I am furious with her. Her sudden departure in such a manner, without even providing me with the opportunity to discuss the matter, has left me feeling upset. On the other hand, I am primarily devastated by Adam. Be damned by biology, he is my actual son. For the past 14 years I have loved him and reared him. Is it possible to simply delete that? Despite the fact that I am humiliated and ashamed, I have considered making contact with Rebecca's family or others who are acquaintances with us both. Because I have been ignorant of the truth for all of these years, I feel like an idiot. What if they were all aware of it but chose to conceal it from me? Considering everything else that is going on, I don't think I would be able to accept that treachery. There is a portion of me that feel resentment at Adam's biological father as well. Where has he been for the past 14 years? It is unclear why he chose to return at this time. Had he been aware of Adam from the beginning? There is no way for me to acquire answers to the many questions that I have. Like you, I'm worried about Adam. He is abandoning all he is familiar with, including his home, his friends, and his school. Is this really the direction that he should go in? In addition, what about this man? Who is his biological father? Describe the kind of guy he is. Does he have the same love and concern for Adam that I have? Without them, the house has a certain emptiness about it. No matter how hard I try, I just can't seem to force myself to enter Adam's room. His dirty clothing is still in the hamper, and his soccer trophies are still sitting on the shelf for him to admire. They appear to have hurriedly fled, abandoning a significant portion of their lives in the process. As a result of my lack of knowledge of other options, I am creating this post. Does anyone else have any experience with something similar to this? How are you able to deal with it? What are the chances that I will be able to develop a romantic connection with Adam in the years to come? I appreciate you taking the time to read this. Simply letting everything out, even if it's to complete strangers on the internet, can be a little bit of a relief. I never imagined that I would find myself in this predicament, yet here I am. It's possible that life might change in a moment and you never know what's going to happen. Update. Since it has been a few months since my last article, I felt it was important to bring you all up to speed on what has transpired. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone for their support throughout what has been the most difficult period of my life. Kind comments and sound counsel meant more to me than you could possibly know. I received divorce papers from Rebecca not long after I made my original post. It came as a surprise to me when I saw it in black and white, despite the fact that I had anticipated it. At that moment, everything seemed so conclusive and so true. After the initial numbness subsided, I came to the realization that it was necessary for me to actively defend my rights as Adam's father. Without putting up a fight, I couldn't just stand by and let them keep him. I chose to call a lawyer. Financially, it was difficult, especially with Rebecca and Adam gone, but I knew I had to do it. I came upon a respectable attorney ready to handle the payments with me. Given that I'm not Adam's biological father, he cautioned me from the beginning that it would be an uphill fight, but I was resolved to try. The court system was cruel, far more than I had anticipated. The biological father of Rebecca and Adam, David, seemed to have endless means. Given David's reportedly great riches, things got even more challenging for me. Hiring a strong counsel, it soon became evident they would be playing dirty in court. Rebecca and David presented me as a lazy parent unable to support Adam. They brought up my 2 jobs and twisted it to suggest I was never around. They discussed how David might provide Adam with a better life with private schools and luxury trips. Friends of theirs even said they had witnessed me ignore Adam or treat him angrily. I thought I could be in a dream. All I had done out of love for my family was being turned against me. Turning 2 jobs into support for them became neglect. The camping trips Adam and I enjoyed were written off as cheap holidays. Their response appeared to cover everything, and I was beginning to lose hope. Though my attorney gave his all, we were outgunned everywhere. David's money seemed to change everything. Expert witnesses speaking on the value of biological ties were present. Child psychologists testified about how Adam might be better off in a more steady financial environment. They seemed to have covered everything. I got ready for the worst, maybe losing Adam permanently. It was nearly intolerable to consider never seeing him again, of someone else raising him and being called dad. There were evenings when I couldn't sleep. I would lie awake and consider all the events I would miss. Then though, something unanticipated occurred. The court decided Adam himself wanted to be heard. I trembled. And if Rebecca and David had turned him against me? Suppose he expressed wanting to live with them. Hearing Adam declare he wanted me no more made me wonder whether I could manage. I hardly could breathe when Adam stood up. But what followed turned everything around. Adam added, "I want to live with my dad, my real dad, the one who raised me," straight ahead toward the judge. What I was hearing defied belief. Adam continued by saying that he loved our camping vacations, that I was a wonderful parent and how I always made time to assist him with his homework, even though I was exhausted from work. He spoke of how I taught him to ride a bike, how I never missed a soccer game, and how I always made him feel loved and supported. Adam then let forth a bombshell. He told the court David's mother and dad had been attempting to guide him on what to say. Late at night, he claimed he overheard them strategizing how to make me appear worse. They had advised him to say I was often furious and exhausted, that I didn't give his schooling any thought, and that I was negligent. Adam declared he couldn't carry on with it. He knew it was untrue and couldn't lie about the guy who had been at his side all of his life. He even brought up particular exchanges he had heard Rebecca and David talking about how to falsify the facts and testimonial proof against me. The courtroom went still. On Rebecca and David's faces, I could sense shock. Attentively listening, the judge asked Adam several questions to help him to define what he had heard and experienced. Adam told the judge about a conversation he had overheard in which David proposed they bribe some of my colleagues to testify. I regularly complained about Adam or seemed uninterested in his life. Rebecca had been initially reluctant, he added, but David persuaded her it was essential to guarantee they would win. He also recalled overhearing them talk about coaching Adam's teachers to say, "I never showed up for parent-teacher conferences," which was untrue. Though it meant missing business, I had always made time for those. Adam said he missed me and our life together and felt afraid and perplexed by all of this. The hearing's whole tone changed following Adam's testimony. The judge directed Rebecca and David to look into their activities, including efforts at manipulation of a minor's testimony. Their attorney seemed uncomfortable, and I could see Rebecca and David furiously speaking to one another. Reviewing all the evidence and Adam's testimony, the court spent several days. Among the longest days I have ever lived were those. After hearing Adam, I was encouraged. However, I also felt afraid to allow myself hope things would turn around. At last the day arrived for the judge to render his ruling. As we gathered in the courtroom, I was a frightened wreck. The judge began by noting that he had given great thought to all the data offered as well as Adam's testimony. While financial stability is crucial, he noted, a child's best interests are determined by other factors as well. He noted that even though it meant working 2 jobs, I had regularly met Adam's needs. He noted that I had always made time for what mattered most in Adam's life and complimented my commitment to his schooling and extracurricular activities. Regarding Rebecca and David's attempts to control the case and guide Adam's evidence, the court also expressed great worry. This, he claimed, indicated a disrespect for Adam's emotional health and begged questions about their parenting competency. The judge decided at last to award me complete custody of Adam. He added that Adam's wishes and well-being came first and that it was obvious I had been a caring and committed father. He said years of love, care, and dedication define the link between a parent and their child more than just biology. With regard to the divorce, it was approved. I had no want to stay married to Rebecca after all that had happened. Given their attempts to control the case, the judge additionally mandated Rebecca and David pay my legal fees. The comfort and happiness I experienced upon the judge's judgment is difficult to articulate. I started crying as Adam hurried to embrace me. It was as though a weight had been offloaded from my shoulders. I felt as though I could breathe once more, first in months. The last few weeks have been spent learning about our new normal. Adam and I share an ancient house. Financially, it's challenging, but we're making it work. I have to cut back on some things, but Adam knows. He even volunteered to contribute by working a part-time job, but I advised him to concentrate on school and growing up. Adam has been quite remarkable over all of this. He's in therapy to help him sort through all that's happened. I find great pride in his maturity and fortitude. We have had some lengthy conversations on family, faith, and what it means to be a parent. Though it hasn't always been simple, I believe our experience is helping us both grow. Rebecca and David have visiting rights. Adam has made it plain he does not want to see them right now. I'm letting him lead on that. I wouldn't want to put him in any scenario he finds uncomfortable forced upon him. When Adam feels ready, the therapist has advised we go slowly and perhaps begin with supervised visits. Personally, I'm in therapy trying to sort out the stress of the past few months and the betrayal. Though it's not simple, I'm going day by day. I'm beginning to believe once more that even in the worst of circumstances good things can happen. I had to adjust somewhat at work. My managers have been understanding when I presented the circumstances. I have cut back on some hours to be home more with Adam. Though monetarily tighter, being there for Adam is well worth it. We are gradually coming to our new rhythm. Most evenings today, Adam and I make dinner together. Though we're both really bad at it, we're learning and having a lot of fun throughout. Starting a weekly movie night, we are working through all the classic movies I liked growing up. I want to thank everyone who helped and advised me on my first post. Sometimes the only thing keeping me going was your nice comments. To anybody else experiencing something like this, keep on. The truth finds a way to surface. I am looking forward to the future, as is Adam. Just the two of us enjoy old times, hence this summer we are going camping. It excites both of us as an opportunity to reconnect and create fresh memories. Still difficult are the times ahead. I know there will be difficult days when the hurt and resentment return. Adam and I can, however, also conquer anything together. We shall always have each other no matter what. I appreciate it all once more. It implies more than you're aware of. Here marks fresh starts and the family we will pick. My entitled sister abandoned her 3 children, so I raised them. Years later, they offer me money as a thank you, but she demands it. Hello, I am 48F, and my younger sister, Diana, is 46F. Diana and I never got along well as youngsters. She was always snobbish and unpleasant to me, so we split up as soon as we graduated high school. I elected to continue my education, whilst she preferred to live with her boyfriend at the moment. It was lucky that her lover was wealthy, as our parents could never have afforded the rent for her to live alone. However, she made it abundantly obvious to our parents that she was unconcerned about their opinions on her life and would do whatever she wanted. So my parents never tried to stop her and instead let her go free. Diana had twin girls at 20 and a boy at 21 while living with her lover. My parents were pleased for her, but also anxious because she now had many responsibilities and no work. She was wholly dependent on her boyfriend's money to support her lifestyle. Diana never married her partner, which I believe was a mistake because she would have been entitled to alimony if they split up. They had to part ways after Diana discovered that he had been cheating on her. Thankfully, he provided the child support she was entitled to, but he chose not to be a father and signed away his parental rights. The girls were 3 years old at the time, but my nephew was only 2. After that, my sister was fully on her own and required all of the assistance she could get to maintain herself. Despite our sour relationship, I chose to assist her, primarily owing to pressure from our parents. At the time, I made a respectable living, but it wasn't enough to sustain all 4 of them. However, my parents and I gave a tiny bit of money each month, and they were able to make ends meet. She struggled for the first several months because she lacked a degree and work experience. She had to start at the bottom and work her way up, which forced her to dedicate a significant amount of time to her employment in order to grow rapidly. But this was difficult because she also had to consider her children, and she couldn't simply leave them at home. Hiring a babysitter was a possibility, but it was prohibitively expensive, so she was forced to rely on me or her friends. Our parents were also working and contributing financially to aid her, so they were unable to stay at home with the children. I was in the same predicament. She didn't have any friends who would take on the duty of minding her children while she worked because they all had their own lives and occupations. As a result, she was limited to minimum wage positions that allowed her to work flexible hours and return home quickly. This allowed her to avoid paying the babysitter to stay with her children for an extended period of time, which would have been prohibitively expensive. This condition persisted for a few years, and I believe Diana began to despise her own children because she saw them as hurdles to her success. She said that they were the only things preventing her from moving forward. I would pay her a visit on occasion, not for her sake, but for the sake of the children, to make sure they were doing well. I didn't have a nice connection with her, but I wasn't ruthless enough to let innocent children suffer because of their mother's poor decisions. So my parents and I would check on the kids on a regular basis. They were always complaining about Diana's mistreatment of them. She would chastise them for minor infractions and strike out at them simply for being children and trying to have fun. It was a dreadful existence for all of them, and I hoped I could help them by removing them from that place and keeping them with me, but I couldn't because she was the rightful parent and I had no legal authority over them. Furthermore, she received child support from her ex and was doing her best to make ends meet. I felt awful for her, but even worse for the kids. Diana started seeing other men, which made things considerably worse. Every time a relationship failed, she blamed her children. She was convinced that once her partners discovered she was a mother of 3, they would abandon their relationship with her. I believe it was because she never mentioned her children during the early stages of dating, only bringing it up after a month or two, which appeared dishonest. I tried several times to explain this to her, but she was convinced that she was being rejected because she had children. She kept teasing them about it, reminding them of how their father had abandoned her and threatening to leave them as well if they didn't behave. The children were scared of her, and their childhood was defined by their mother's narcissism. This continued for years. Several times, I considered taking the kids and fleeing with them, but I couldn't. I could not petition for custody or denounce her because, while her actions were wrong, they did not justify taking the children away from her. So the scenario remained, and the kids were simply grateful to have me in their life. My parents were too elderly to be their pals, but I was always there for them when they needed it. They could never tell their mother about their issues, but they could always go to their aunt, which they did. Whenever they had problems with school, academics, or even Diana, they would come to me, and I appreciated their trust. It's no surprise that when they turned 18, they decided to leave their mother's house and move in with me instead. Now that they were no longer children, they could select where and with whom to live, and they chose me. Diana was clearly dissatisfied and had a lot to say. She stated she had squandered 18 years of her life raising these children, only for them to abandon her in the end. She was really unpleasant about it, telling me that if I had wanted to raise her children so badly, I should have stepped in sooner rather than taking over after the work was basically done. I wanted to tell her that she hadn't actually raised them. They had basically raised themselves because she was usually at work or out on dates with guys who eventually dumped her after discovering she had 3 children. She had no idea what her priorities should be, and it was clear why things turned out as they did. The children selected the person who had genuinely been there for them over the person who had always tortured and reprimanded them since she couldn't find anyone and was miserable in her life. It was evident that she had no idea she was harming them because she was suffering herself. However, I did not want to rub it in her face because I knew it must have been unpleasant for her, which is why she was lashing out at me. So I kept my mouth shut and that was it. After that, we didn't really communicate. Her children opted to leave her and live with me. Diana also chose to cut ties with all of us and cease speaking to anyone, including our parents. This was weird because they had done nothing to deserve it. I believe the fact that they hadn't chosen her side against me when my nieces and nephew opted to live with me irritated her, so she cut them off as well. It's been 7 years, and they're all doing well now. I don't know what Diana has been up to, but I know her children are doing well. My nephew attended medical school and is now a pediatrician. One of my nieces has a degree in literature and is now a teacher, and her twin sister has a hair shop. I assisted all of them in obtaining business loans and financed them to the best of my ability. I'm very proud of them because they've gone a long way from their previous home. They are now living apart. They only stayed with me for 4 years, and even then, it wasn't really like they were living with me because they were generally away at college and only came back on occasion. I believe they didn't want to return to Diana's home, where they didn't feel wanted. It's been 2 years since they all moved out, and I'm very thrilled for them. I never expected anything in return for what I did because I truly believed it was the right thing to do. They were just kids, and no matter how bad things were between me and my sister, I could never be callous to them. I've always had a soft spot for them, especially since I've never had kids or married. It wasn't my cup of tea, but for them, I wanted to be there as a parental figure because their father wasn't around, and, well, we all know who Diana was. They needed someone, and my parents were too old for the position, so I stepped forward. That is all I did. I never anticipated anything in return, but I am grateful that they are the type of children who think I deserve a gift of appreciation for what I done. Even though I don't believe it was something that required compensation, I appreciated their gesture. About a week ago, I celebrated my 48th birthday with my friends and family, including my nieces and nephew. I had a great time, and my nephew was kind enough to organize everything for me. Despite my desire to pay for everything, he insisted on covering the costs because he is now earning enough money to do things for me and display his appreciation. After the party, the three of them sat me down to talk. They told me that now that they were all financially established, they wanted to express their gratitude by collectively writing me a check. I tried to explain that it was unnecessary because I was still working and could support myself, but they insisted. They claimed it wasn't about repaying a debt, they could never repay me for what I had done for them since it wasn't about money. It was about the encouragement and faith I had provided them, which they could never fully repay. This was their humble attempt to show their appreciation. I was deeply moved by their genuine act and wanted to share it on social media. I just wanted to thank them for everything they were doing for me. My sister and I hadn't spoken in years, so I didn't think she would care. I was blocked on every platform, and I assumed she wouldn't see it, so I felt it was fine. Diana had never followed up with us or inquired about her children's well-being after they had left home. Granted, it was they who broke up with her first and moved in with me, but that was her fault. The least she could have done was show interest in their lives and try to be a mother figure to them in order to make one for her faults. But, to be honest, she didn't seem to care about the loss of communication, so I figured she was all right. Anyway, following that post, I received a reply from her a few days ago. I wasn't expecting it because, as I indicated, we hadn't spoken in 6 years. However, I should have predicted that as soon as she realized her children were financially secure, she would start sniffing around like a bloodhound, trying to figure out how much money she could obtain from them. In her reply, she stated that she had seen my post and wanted to talk about her children. She recognized that she had made mistakes in the past and had not been a good mother to kids, but she felt compelled to give herself another shot. She claimed she had missed them a lot over the previous 6 years. I'm not sure how much truth there is in that statement because if she truly missed them, she could have contacted me at least once. She asked me to speak with her children and help bridge the gap between them, as they respond well to me. The timing was strange, so I ignored her message. However, when I failed to react, she called me in the evening, and I snapped. She insisted that I assist her in reconnecting with her children, but I refused. I was quite aware that she was merely pursuing their money, not because she truly cared about their well-being. If she truly regretted what she had done, she would have contacted them directly rather than talking to me. She couldn't let go of her pride and ego for a single second. She still expected her children to contact her, despite the fact that she was the one who had made a mistake. It was amazing how entitled she was. She tried to dispute with me, arguing that she wasn't pursuing their money and that it was offensive for me to suggest so. I assured her that I was not implying anything. It was so obvious. I felt appalled and repulsed by what she was doing. She then accused me of stealing everything from her, claiming that I had already stolen her children and was now stealing her riches. I informed her that I didn't need the money and was originally hesitant to accept the check, but now I was going to take it all because she didn't deserve it. Now she's crying on social media, telling everyone what I said and attempting to make me seem bad. Some of my relatives say I went too far with what I said, that I'm greedy, and that I owe her an apology, which is absurd. That is why I am here to inquire if I'm in the wrong for telling my sister that she does not deserve the money that her children have decided to give me. Update. As some responses advised, I recounted the situation with my nephews and nieces. They informed me they had heard about it from a few of relatives and had considered speaking with me but had not had the time. However, after I called them over and discussed it with them, they informed me that they believed I did the correct thing. My nephew was open about his views, stating that he had never considered of his mother as a maternal figure throughout his life. He always blamed me because she had never been there for him, and my niece agreed. He'd always been the most outspoken of the group, so it was predictable that this was all coming from him. My nieces were too emotional to speak, but he was quite angry and upset. He explained that Diana only spoke to me since she had never done the basic minimum for them. This was despite the fact that she was receiving child support from their father, and even then, she would humiliate them and make them feel horrible for merely existing, which was not their fault. They believe I did the right thing and have informed me that they will not contact their mother, regardless of what happens. They also believe that I should stand up for myself and explain my side of the story online now that Diana has decided to speak negatively about me on social media. They believe that this is the most effective approach to convey the message, therefore that's what I'll do. I'm delighted they opted to take my side in this because my parents are staying out of it and have stated that they don't want to get involved. Diana never spoke to them after her children cut her off, which I find unusual. My parents' polite approach to this problem strikes me as unusual, given that they have not communicated with Diana in the last 6 years. I was disappointed, but at least my nieces and nephew support me. Now many people have asked me why I did not petition for custody and have the children taken away from Diana if I knew she was a bad mother and was mistreating them. I mentioned in my piece that, while her actions were wrong, they did not constitute torture, abuse or neglect. She was constantly harsh to them and wasn't emotionally present for her children. So while I could have filed for custody, it was quite improbable that I would have gotten the children into my care. Courts typically encourage families to keep together, and in this case, they had already lost their father. Their father had abandoned them, leaving them with only their mother as a biological parent. Naturally, the court would want the family to stay together. I knew that if I filed a petition against her or took legal action against Diana, she would ensure that I never saw them again. She would make certain that she took the kids far away from me. It was already improbable that I would have been able to take kids away from her and obtain full custody, so this would have put them in a dangerous situation. This is why I decided to play it safe by staying in touch with them and being available for them at all times. I'm not sure if it was the correct thing to do in the long term, but at the time, it seemed like the only option. Maybe there were other ways to deal with it, but it was all I could think of, so I did what I believed was right. It was difficult for me, and for years I debated whether I should file for custody or have kids taken away from her and rehomed, but there's no telling what might have occurred, and I figured it was better for kids to stay with their mother and maintain touch with me and my parents than risk anything in this circumstance. I hope this answers the questions most people had for me. Maybe I came across as the evil guy for what I did, but I don't care. I know the kids are doing well in their life, and I did everything I could to keep them happy and safe. I was always there for them, therefore I don't feel guilty about anything. Update 2. It's been a week since Diana's message and I've received a lot of phone calls today from family and people who have spoken with her. They were pointing out my mistakes and scolding me. It was getting really tiresome and I was swamped with work, which is why I hadn't been able to post sooner. But today, I decided I'd had enough. After a brief talk with my nephew and nieces, I decided to finally make a post that shared my side of the story as well as, in some ways, theirs. I don't think anyone in the family realized how much those kids had been through as children. How many taunts they had to endure every day simply because Diana opted to become pregnant early and drop everything for her boyfriend at the time. Even after that, she continued to blame others for her own actions and attempted to appear as if she was doing everything in her ability to do the best for her children. But, in actuality, she was never present for them. Since she was telling everyone that I had stolen her children from her and was now stealing a fortune from her, now that her children were doing well financially, I felt people deserved to know the truth, not just her twisted version of events in which she was the victim rather than the person who tormented everyone. They had already judged me for a variety of reasons since they only knew her side of the story and sympathized with her. But in reality, I deserved to share my side of the story, as did her children. So I typed everything up a few hours ago and published the post. So far, she hasn't said anything to me, and the only texts I've gotten are from relatives who were judging me earlier. They have now abruptly changed their tune and are attempting to apologize for judging me too soon. But frankly, it means nothing to me. I simply wanted them to know the truth. I don't care what they think of me, but it was vital for me to speak the truth and share how Diana handled her children, which is why they are no longer in contact with her. Anyway, now that everything is finished, I am ready to move on from this. Honestly, I don't want anything to do with Diana anymore, and I was perfectly content for the past 6 years when she didn't contact me. I believe the same may be stated for her children as well. I don't understand why she felt the need to create so much drama. If she wanted money, she might have asked for it rather than pretending to want another chance at motherhood. Update 3. It's been a day since I wrote that post. Diana may have woken up today and decided to get back at me. Instead of contacting me directly, she became increasingly dramatic and began commenting on that post, attempting to make it appear as if I was lying. But it was not going to work. Obviously, as soon as she attempted to react, her children began commenting and responding to her, reminding her of particular episodes from their childhood in which she had been cruel to them. That lasted about an hour, and I didn't feel awful about it. Nobody else did, because my nephew, nieces and I were all thoroughly enjoying the process. They were utterly humiliating her, and there was no way she could get out of it since every single lie she tried to say to make me look bad was discovered. I'm glad I chose to do this on the weekend. Otherwise, we might not have been able to respond as swiftly. Anyway, that lasted about an hour, and then she began deleting her comments so that no one could catch her in her falsehoods. However, it was too late because many others had already noticed what was going on in the comment section, and I believe she began to be called out for her actions by others. She started erasing her comments and backtracking on everything she said, and then she blocked me. She also blocked her children. I'm guessing it was her way of surrendering, and I'm pleased she did because she would have lost in a fight with us. We clearly have the upper hand here, morally or otherwise. I believed deleting the comments would be the end of our connection, but she chose to contact me personally as well. She messaged me, saying she hoped I was happy now that I had presented her as the monster and everyone hated her. It was very ironic coming from her, because that was exactly what she was attempting to do to me first. She initiated it, and now when I wanted to return it to her, she is unable to accept it. I don't understand why individuals attempt to dish it out when they know they can't take it in return. Just don't cause any drama if you don't want to be held accountable for the results. Anyway, I disregarded that message, and that's what we're all going to do for the rest of our lives because she's no longer worth our attention. She has proven it. Am I the asshole for refusing to raise my husband's children from his affair now that he and the woman he cheated with have passed away? Sorry for using a new account. I know that's a red flag, but I don't want to risk using my old Reddit account. My 45F husband, 49M, of 23 years has been having an affair with a 20-years-old girl since 2020. I found out this year when his affair partner gave birth to twin boys in March. Obviously we were going to divorce. We've been hashing things out since. It's been a lengthy process due to some properties in common, and we needed to get an accountant since he used the shared account for his affair. Finally, things seemed to be getting close to the end when both my husband and the woman he cheated with were killed in a car crash. By some miracle, the twin babies were not harmed in the crash. Now they are orphaned and neither set of grandparents can take them in permanently. My husband's parents are both in assisted living. He has no siblings and the only aunt that could take them refuses. She's been child-free her whole life. On the woman's side, I'm not sure the details in full, but her parents are also not able to be involved long-term, and the one sister she has lives overseas. Since we were still married and he had not updated his will, all his assets are set to pass to me and our 2 children. I'm not callous enough to leave those babies with nothing, so I agreed to let whoever is their legal guardian to have the remaining balance in the shared account. About $25,000 in savings. The issue is no one wants to take them in. Now my in-laws are pressuring me to take them in and raise them. The issue is, I don't want to. At all. I wouldn't love them and I don't want to be the evil stepmother. But I know a big part of me will always have a level of resentment towards them. I will probably favor my own children. It's not their fault, but I truly loved my husband and I thought we were happy before I found out about the affair. We have 2 daughters, 14 and 16. Obviously we had disagreements, but never insulted each other before. Then I found out about the affair and he began calling me names and blaming me for his cheating. He became abusive and even tried to kick me off the house, my childhood home that is not shared property for the record. I'm also raising teenagers alone now. I don't have the energy to raise babies anymore. My daughters hate their baby brothers. I tried to get them to spend time with their dad as we were divorcing, but they refused. Since this all was found out because of the babies, there wasn't really a way to sugarcoat the situation. And they are also too old to really get away with it. Most of my friends agree it's not my place to care for those children, but my in-laws, the affair woman's parents and my mother want me to raise them. I know my mom is just having grandkids fever, but it hurts to not have her support. I have to make a decision by next week or the boys will be going into foster care. At the moment they are temporarily placed with their maternal grandparents. I feel horrible, but I am very sure I can't take them in. Small update. Hey everyone, this blew up far more than I thought, and I appreciate the well wishes for my girls, the boys and myself. Also for the amount of lovely people offering to see about giving the twins a good home. I might not be their mother, but it does touch me and makes me glad there's good people out there. After thinking carefully and speaking to my lawyer, reading responses, doing research, etc. I plan to speak to the grandparents tomorrow and refuse to take legal guardianship of the boys. I will let them know of the usernames of people that offered meetings for private adoptions or fostering, but my daughters are my priority. It'll be up to the twins' grandparents to decide if they'll proceed with adoption, keep them, or turn them to the state. I wish I had the mental capacity to be the person to do this, but I have 2 girls that are going through a lot and they need my full attention. I'll also be talking to the lawyers to figure out if the boys have any inheritance claim properly. If they do, I'll separate it and leave it to the lawyers to do what they need to do for them to have access when it's best. If they don't, I'll find a way to ensure they have access to the $25,000 I was going to give them since the beginning. I won't do more, however. My moral compass might be biased, but I don't believe I'm obligated neither morally or legally to do more than what the word of law says. I can't help everyone and I shouldn't have to. I have 2 girls that lost their father, 2 girls that need therapy, 2 girls just about to get to college. They've gone through enough without seeing their mother favor the children of their father's mistress. Now to the next story, story 2. My stepmother abused my fiance's young brother, causing a family rift that threatens to destroy our wedding and relationships forever. Original post, mention of child Abu *E. It's not too graphic, but it's there. I tried posting this on AITA through a different account a couple days ago, but it didn't work out. Given the trigger warning, I'm not surprised. I have since concluded my wife and I did the right thing, so this will be my last attempt to post this story. I tried to add some info and change the wording a little. All names are fake. My 28M stepmother, 49F, is a wannabe party planner. She has taken it upon herself to plan and host every party and holiday my dad's family has thrown since she married him. I never loved those occasions growing up. She's controlling and gets upset if people complain about anything, but humored her for my dad's sake. According to him, this helps her feel included. I'm getting married to my fiancée Jane, 26F, in July. We got engaged in early 2021, but Jane ended up getting pregnant a couple months after that, and we decided to postpone the wedding to focus on our son for a while. So we've had a long engagement. My stepmother has tried to hijack our wedding plans from day one, complaining, contacting our planner, showing up unannounced to Jane's dress appointments, etc. And we have repeatedly asked her to stop. Dad wants us to humor her, but she's clearly resentful of the fact that she's not hosting the wedding or being labeled mother of the groom in invitations. Besides our baby boy, we also have Luke, 4M, Jane's paternal half-brother. She got custody of him a few months into our relationship, after his parents died. I ended up moving in with them during the pandemic, and have been in Luke's life since he was a baby. He doesn't call me dad, and refers to us as his sister and his OP, but we love him like a son. Stepmother though hates Luke. She accuses Jane of baby trapping her way into the family. That accusation only got worse after our son was born. My dad gets along with Jane and adores the kids, but stepmother demands him to refuse babysitting Luke, so we don't leave the kids with them often. Instead, Jane's brother and CL usually watch the kids for us, as their children are close to ours in age. We had a thing last Sunday, and my Bill was out of town with his family. Jane's other siblings live in different cities, as well as my mom and sister. My dad agreed to babysit at our place and we left. We came back to find both kids crying, stepmother screaming, and dad weakly trying to calm everyone down. Apparently, Luke had told stepmother that both he and our son were going to be our ring bearers, and she went ballistic. She screamed that she wasn't going to allow that because he wasn't family. She then made me need to include the trigger warning when he started crying. His lip is still split. She'd never gotten to this point before. We immediately banned her from our house and from our wedding. Dad is fuming and has said he's not going without her. He's also convinced half of his side of the family, by severely downplaying what stepmother did, to boycott the wedding as well. This includes my stepbrother, who fully agrees with his mother no matter how many times I try to tell him the truth. Me and Jane are refusing to budge, but many of my cousins who aren't coming anymore are asking us to reconsider. Pretty much all of Jane's family agrees with us, but one of her aunts has suggested that maybe stepmother is acting out because she doesn't feel welcomed by my family. I've honestly had it with my family enabling her behavior. I love my dad, and really want him at my wedding, but I am more than willing to go NC if it means protecting my family. Edit. I think I accidentally deleted the paragraph where I mentioned this, but we did press charges. We took Luke to the pediatrician the next day and gathered every piece of evidence we had. Not only did we have pictures of Luke's face, but by some miraculous strike of luck, we also had nanny cam footage. Some commenters were right to assume that my SM hadn't been invited to our house, but my dad hasn't really gone anywhere without her in years, so we took precautions. We didn't expect her to actually do anything this awful, but we've never trusted her with the kids. The physical attack happened off camera, but there is some footage of her screaming and Luke crying before and after the event. She now has a child abuse charge on her rap sheet. We wouldn't let her get away with this. Edit 2. There is a lot of additional info I want to add. I'll try to respond to at least some of the comments. I did not expect the amount I've gotten so far, but all I'll add for now is that Luke is okay. The visit to the pediatrician happened the day after. He already had a counselor. Jane was pretty traumatized when her dad and stepmom died, and was worried it would rub off on him, and will continue treatment. We've been hugging and pampering him a little more than usual too. He's still upset, but is already doing much better. Update 1. I want to thank everybody who took the time to read and/or comment on my previous post. It's been a tough week, but it's always great to know that people care. I haven't been able to reply to every comment, but I will try to address some in this update. This might get a little long. I'll start off by saying that me and Jane are going NC with my dad and SM. We haven't really spoken to either of them since the incident, and I don't plan on being the one to reach out. Any communication between us is being handled by my younger sister. She's completely on our side, but will remain in low contact for the time being. I've decided to adopt Jane's way of dealing with people she cares about. Forgive what's apologized for, but never forget. Basically, if Dad or SM ever truly understand what they did wrong and sincerely apologize, we're willing to forgive them. Even if begrudgingly so, but we will never ignore, or let them forget, what they did to our family. And for the time being, neither of them will be allowed near Luke, our baby, and any other kids we may have in the future, even if we do forgive them. As for the rest of my family, I read a lot of comments suggesting that I post pictures of Luke's face, as well as the nanny cam footage. I'm not very active on social media, but even if I was, I'm not comfortable exposing my injured preschooler like that, especially given that nothing on the internet ever truly goes away. I also decided not to share the pictures with my family unless truly necessary. I should probably mention that while my family adores my dad, most of them aren't very fond of SM. She had 2 failed marriages prior to meeting my father, the first of which resulted in my stepbrother, and he cheated on his then girlfriend to be with her. My family loved that girlfriend and disliked SM right away. Not only has she been controlling and manipulative since the beginning, she's also tried to force her way into the family matriarch role by any means possible. Taking over planning duties for every family event was her favorite way to do it, because of all the attention and compliments that come with it. The main reason why I hated these parties growing up was because she'd always find a way to make everything about her, including Christmas and mine and my sister's birthdays. The rest of the family felt neutral about it, but they never liked her. With Luke, it was different. Most of my relatives didn't meet him until COVID restrictions got looser, and by then he was 2 years old. He's a bright and genuinely lovable kid, and there weren't really any other small children in the family, so everyone immediately started cooing over him. The way I see it, SM got upset that Jane and Luke were accepted by my family so easily compared to her experience, and that's why she resents them both, but I can't confirm that. She was also mad that, aside from not being the planner, she would have absolutely no involvement in the wedding party. She tried to pressure us into letting her officiate. One of Jane's best friends was offered that role a year ago, making stepbrother my best man. He wasn't interested and I'd already gotten my best friend. Or asking her sister's daughter to be our flower girl. We'd promised Jane's 3-year-old niece, also her sister's daughter is 15 and doesn't know us. She also tried to convince us to let my dad walk Jane down the aisle, since her father's gone, but her eldest brother, the Bill I mentioned in the first post, had already been enlisted. SM was disappointed that my family wasn't as involved in the wedding as Jane's, and kept making comments about how that would never happen if we put her in charge. All of that being said, there's nothing that can excuse being that awful to a child, especially if it really is the petty jealousy that I suspect. Because I haven't spoken with my father, my sister has been keeping me updated on what he's been up to. As I found out through her, the story my dad and SM told the rest of the family completely erases Luke's injury and the abuse charges. It insinuates that me and Jane banned them because we got annoyed with SM and decided to take it out on my dad as well. Because most people already disliked SM, explaining what actually happened that night wasn't hard, and most of the relatives that I actually wanted at the wedding have apologized and are berating my dad as well. The people that didn't believe us, as well as those saying we overreacted, have been told they are not welcome in our home anymore. Those are mostly people from my dad's generation, so I can't say I'm surprised. But the realization that they are so biased they're willing to protect a woman they hate, after she hurt a child, just to make my dad happy has reassured me that I don't need any of them in my life. Stepbrother is still in denial. He refuses to believe his mother could hurt a child, even with all the evidence we have. I have to admit I understand. I love my mom too, but that doesn't mean I'd excuse his obliviousness. So he's banned too. It sucks, because we were close growing up, but I don't regret it. Besides, Jane has 3 other siblings besides Luke, the older Bill, a twin brother and a younger sister, and I'm closer to them than I ever was to him. Speaking of Jane's family, they're all furious over what happened, and have been extremely supportive of us. Jane's maternal family basically adopted Luke after she got custody of him, and have called frequently to make sure he's okay. We did manage to save some money with everybody we uninvited, and have decided to use it to help Jane's cousin. She lives in a different country, and was previously unable to come to the wedding, so we're paying for her plane ticket. Luke has gotten much better, and is almost completely back to being the sunny child he's always been. The split lip was shallow. It's healing slowly, but didn't require any stitches. We sat him down a few days ago, and explained that my dad and stepmonster wouldn't be around anymore. He really liked my dad, but understands that he and SM are attached at the hip. He's clearly scared of her, but we're doing our best to make him feel safe. Me and Jane have reassured him that he is family, we love him, and no one will ever change that. I'm not too worried about Dad or SM trying to show up at the wedding, but we've alerted the venue and given them pictures just in case they try anything. Better safe than sorry. Some people brought attention to the fact that SM is a hypocrite for saying Luke isn't family. I agree, for obvious reasons. Her main excuse for pretty much everything she does is that she doesn't feel like my family welcomes her. Dad has been guilting me to take part in everything she plans by reminding us of that for as long as I can remember. The way he continues to make excuses for her without realizing this is basically a case of the pot calling the kettle black, except Luke actually is family, is what has made me accept that, while I will always love my dad, it's not healthy or safe for me and my family to be around him anymore. It hurts to know my son won't have his only remaining bio-grandfather in his life, but he has two amazing step-grandpas to make up for it. For now, I'm sad, but satisfied with how things have turned out. I don't like to complain about my life. It's a mess, but a beautiful one. I love my fiancé, I love my kids, and I'm lucky enough to love my job. We're happy. I'm not letting anyone ruin that. To whoever was annoyed at my censorship. When posting on AITA didn't work out, Jane suggested I make the writing less explicit. I'm not used to Reddit yet, so I might have overdone it a little bit. I hope this is my last update on this story, but I'll keep you posted. Again, thank you for all your love and support. Best wishes to all of you. Relevant comments from OOP. The only reason why I know that this is the first time she's hit him is because this was the first and last time she was with the kids unsupervised. Me and Jane were around every previous time she saw Luke. She didn't want my dad to babysit him, and we'd only asked him to on a few occasions before. My sister was still living with them at the time, and has assured me that Luke was never out of her sight. I know and trust my sister enough to believe her. First time or not, I will not give her a second chance. She'll never hurt either of my kids again. OOP when told to secure passwords with all vendors. We've actually had passwords with the vendors since day one. Some of the earlier ones we met actually recommended us to do it. SM did contact our planner a while back saying she had our approval to talk to our vendors. She didn't let her, and we got a bit more strict with passwords after that. Commenter, so is SM serving any jail time? If she attacked a child then and you guys pressed charges, I would imagine she would have to be processed and eventually serve some time for her crime. OOP, we hope so. We're setting up a date for the arraignment. Commenter. Start a file for SM. Keep any and all texts, voicemails and attempts of her communicating. Do the same with anyone who has taken her side because she could escalate, and you may need that info. Those people are flying monkeys and she's sent them to not only plead her case, but report back to her the things you may have told them so she can continue to play her victim card. You were great to have the nanny cam, but should also make sure to notify his daycare or school that she is not to be given info or access to him. Get cameras that have audio just in case she shows up at your house, and password protect all of your wedding vendors and let them know not to give her any info and to notify you if she tries. Your dad may be harmless, but she's not. OOP. That second advice is something we've been pretty occupied with, actually. This past week has been mostly about the kids and collecting evidence, but I'll definitely check out the JN Mill sub. Commenter, did you say that if your father and stepmonster apologize that you will allow them at your wedding? I wasn't quite sure what you were saying. OOP, absolutely not. My father and SM are not welcome at the wedding, no matter the circumstances. They could offer me an island and I'd still refuse to let them come back into our lives right now. I only plan to forgive anything far off in the future, and only if they apologize sincerely. Even then, they will have no access to the kids for years after that. Knowing SM, I highly doubt she'll ever feel sorry for what she did, so we're not counting on it anyway. Update 2. I'll start off by, probably, disappointing a lot of people. We're coming to terms with the fact that it's unlikely SM will get anything more than a slap on the wrist. Me and Jane are discussing our next move with our lawyer, but we're still not sure how we're going to move forward. It's too early to tell anyway, so we're trying not to get ahead of ourselves any more than we already have. However, I'm relieved to announce that we're getting started on the process for a restraining order against SM. We're using the same evidence we gathered the week following the incident, including the nanny cam footage and pictures of Luke, and we'll focus on that for the time being. I still haven't spoken to my father. My sister is still in LC, but is seriously considering cutting ties with him. Because my sister is the only one on my side that still talks to him, my father keeps trying to ask her about me, and whether I've calmed down yet. According to her, he's annoyed that half of his family refuses to talk to him, but still doesn't seem to accept why. I told my sister that she doesn't need to keep playing messenger pigeon between me and our father. I never asked her to do it, and it's clearly taking a toll on her. But she insists she'll stop when it feels right. By the way, there's absolutely no doubt whether SM attacked Luke. Not only did Luke say at the moment we got home, but that was also confirmed by my father in a failed attempt to defend her behavior. He never tried to hide it from us. That, and the fact that he gave Luke an ice bag, is literally the only positive thing I can say about his actions. And SM was too busy screaming about how much of a whining brat Luke was being to deny it. To those who guessed SM is younger than my dad, you get an invisible cookie. She's also 5 years younger than his previous girlfriend. They got together when I was around 15. Also, my stepbrother is only a month older than me. She turns 50 later this year, had him at 21, married his father a year later. Both our kids are doing mostly okay. Luke's back to running around the house in his Superman costume whenever he doesn't have anything better to do. He did have a few nightmares this past week, and is asked to sleep on our bed twice. We don't mention my father around him, and he's still seeing his counselor. Our 14-month-old son has learned 2 new words, hi and bye, and Luke is trying to teach him to say his name. Jane's sister, who moved away for college, is coming over for a couple days to celebrate her 21st birthday later this month. Luke's excited to see her, and Jane's excited to get drunk with her. Can't say I blame her. We're hoping her presence will cheer us all up. I'm not doing so good, and neither is Jane. She's usually the kind of person who tries to keep her negative emotions to herself, but she cried herself to sleep almost every night the week it happened. It breaks my heart to see her like that, and I can't help but feel like this is my fault. There's a part of me trying to tell myself I had no way of knowing SM would do anything like that, but that doesn't really change anything. I allowed my father near my kids unsupervised, even though I knew she'd probably tag along. This is the guiltiest I've ever felt, and I don't think I'll ever forgive myself. Jane has been improving lately, and is trying to convince me to see a therapist. I've never really done that before, apart from a psychiatrist when I was younger, but now feels like a good time to give it a try. I was surprised by a few messages this week from people telling me to forgive my father and SM, as well as re-invite them to the wedding. That's not happening. In fact, I'm not willing to ever forgive SM. My dad has now degraded to a huge maybe, but I will never understand or forget what she did. Also, though the wedding is the last thing on our minds right now, we're not postponing it. We considered rescheduling, but the date we'd settled on is pretty much the only one that works for our guests. We have passwords with all our vendors, and gave them all clear instructions not to talk to anyone but us. Jane's family is bigger and closer to each other, which is why they're more involved in the wedding than mine, but I do have family participating. My sister is one of the bridesmaids, 2 of my cousins are groomsmen, and my mom is walking down the aisle with the wedding party. Going through all of this with Jane has made me understand even more just how much I love this woman. I couldn't ask for a better partner to start a family with, and I have no idea what I'd do without her. This didn't tear us apart, and I couldn't be more thankful. I probably won't make any more updates until after the wedding, unless something big happens. In the meantime, as always, best wishes to all of you. Update 3. I didn't plan on updating again before the wedding, but something pretty huge happened. The good news is we got the RO. The bad news is me and Jane had to see both SM and my father at the court hearing. This was our first time seeing them since we kicked them out of our house over a month ago, and neither of us were looking forward to it. We left the kids with Jane's brother and Sil, so at least Luke didn't have to see them. The hearing itself went a lot quicker than I expected. I'll give credit where it's due. My father was, at the very least, smart enough to understand there was no way they were winning this. There was a lot of evidence against them. Not only did we have the nanny cam footage and Luke's pictures and medical record, but my sister had also gathered every text and email SM had sent her and the family about what happened. And SM hates speaking on the phone, so there were a lot of those. They didn't even bother to get an attorney for the hearing. The judge granted us a protection order against SM. She's not allowed within 500 feet of us or our property anymore. We're changing all our locks this week, and I'm thinking about changing my phone number as well. I have to admit, the moment we left the courthouse was the safest I'd felt since this whole ordeal started. Jane was close to tearing up with joy when we got to the car. We picked up the kids and went to McDonald's with Bill and his family to celebrate. Hours later, my father called me. The order doesn't extend to him, so he can still do that. Jane and the kids were in bed, so I answered. I didn't expect him to change his mind and apologize all of a sudden, but decided to give him one last chance. He tried to start some awkward small talk, but I told him to get to the point. He asked me if the order was truly necessary. I stated, very clearly, that SM was never coming near Jane or my children again, and that I was glad I had an RO to formalize that. Every excuse he had for SM was pretty easy to shut down, but she only hit him once. Yep, and that's enough for me. The kids need their grandma. She's not their grandma, Mom is. She's my wife. You need to respect her. She attacked Luke, she disrespected my family and my own house. I don't owe her anything, least of all my respect. He then went on a rant about family, how much of a godsend SM was and everything she'd done for me and my sister since she came into our lives. I replied by listing every time I could remember about her lying, overstepping a boundary or acting unhinged around me, my family or my sister. I brought up both my adult life and my youth. Examples included her attempts to hijack most of our milestones, recently, our wedding plans, our son's birth, Jane's baby shower and my sister's college graduation. Her obsession with the idea of a perfect family, and her disgusting attitude towards Luke. I also made sure to mention her habits of going through mine and my sister's stuff when we were younger. It's trivial, compared to everything else, but this behavior went on until my sister moved out of their house, only 3 months ago. We're pretty sure she found out about Jane's wedding dress appointments by reading my sister's planner while she wasn't home, for instance. Some of the memories I mentioned are long and hard to explain, but they did cement the fact that SM means nothing to me. He tried to go with the whole, she doesn't feel included excuse again, but I shut him up. I said he'd had the opportunity to protect his grandchildren, but had chosen his monster of a wife instead, and that's enough for me to want nothing to do with him. I hung up without saying goodbye. My sister told me he called her afterwards, and she told him she was going NC with him as well. I think we're both starting to accept our father won't change. It sucks, but he's made his priorities clear, and his children and grandkids aren't among them. For now, that's it. Now that they're fresh in my mind, I'm thinking about sharing some of the stories I reminded my father of, but that's gonna take a while. Until then, as always, best wishes to all of you. Relevant comments. Commenter, but she only hit him once would have ended the phone call for me. OOP, I almost hung up on him when he said that. The only reason I didn't was because I knew I wasn't gonna talk to him again anytime soon, and I still had a lot to say. Commenter. I am curious how your stepbrother is handling all of this. Like, the RO is something you can't just push away. A judge stated that what his mother did was so terrible she needed to stay away from those children. It just feels like something you can't stick your head in the sand and claim that you could never believe that your mother could hurt someone like that. OOP, I haven't spoken to him since days before the RO, and he hasn't tried to contact me or my sister. He was still in denial last time we talked, but seemed a bit doubtful. TBH, I think he's the only one who isn't a complete lost cause and still has a slight chance of coming around. He's still banned, but I might be willing to talk to him about this whole thing. Commenter. Holy hell. If you are comfortable sharing, I know many of us would want to hear those hijacking stories. Hope the kids don't have too terribly long an impact on their life from this, especially the preschooler. OOP. Luke hasn't mentioned her in a while. I don't doubt he was affected by this, but I think he understands everything is okay now. Our baby is barely a year old. And if it's up to me, he won't even know she exists until he's grown. I'll definitely share some of the stories as soon as I can bring myself to write them down. Commenter. It's crazy how the court gave your dad a chance not to give him the protection order and you gave him a chance to explain on the phone and he still managed to screw up. You guys gave so many chances and your dad fails to see that SM is a bad person. Your dad doesn't seem like he's going to change, and until he does, somehow stop giving him more chances. OP, that was his last chance, and he blew it. If he ever comes around, and that's a big if, it'll still take me a long time to allow him back into our lives. Update 4. After being engaged for over 2 years, me and Jane finally got married last Saturday. We're still getting used to calling each other husband and wife, but we'll get there. Hopefully. The wedding was awesome. The kids had fun, our extended families finally met, and we danced so much I could barely stand the next day. Luke took his ring bearer duties seriously, and held my son's hand as they walked down the aisle. Besides my aunt getting shit-faced and being let out on a wheelchair, which I already thought would happen anyway, everything went according to plan. It's been 4 months since we got the RO against SM. Things have been mostly quiet, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Except completely quiet, but we can't always get what we want. I never really worried about SM showing up at the wedding, especially after the RO. It's literally illegal for her to come close to us, and we made it very clear that if she tried, we'd call the cops right away. My friends still warned me to take safety measures, most of which I did. SM didn't show up, of course, but I'm a strong believer that any money spent on security is well spent, so no regrets on that end. My stepbrother and I wished each other happy birthdays, and he also texted Jane on hers back in June. That's the only contact we've had during these months. He knows that the door is still open if he wants to apologize. My dad has given up on trying to reach me. We haven't spoken since April. He's still trying to talk to my sister, for some reason, but she's ignoring him. A few days after she went NC with him, they had a huge fight over the phone about SM's treatment of us over the years. Insults were thrown, sore subjects were brought up and, most importantly, my father took SM's side on almost everything. My sister called me crying afterwards. I wanted to call him and yell at him, but she told me not to. She's doing okay now. She hasn't blocked him, but doesn't take his calls or answer his texts. She's only gotten 3, a weak apology, one on my birthday back in May, and a long rant after neither of us wished him a happy Father's Day. After all, despite our differences, he's still our father. He's not wrong. I love my father, and I always will, but I can't be around him anymore. While I've closed that door, I'm not locking it just yet. He knows what he needs to do if he wants his family back. I don't think he'll do it, but if there's the slightest chance he might, I'll consider opening the door an inch or two. This is my wife's suggestion. I'm a lot less optimistic than she is, but maybe it's important to hold on to that hope. She hasn't forgiven him though. Or SM, Jane has always been very protective of Luke, so it was no surprise that this disaster shook her. A part of me was scared she'd blame me, but she called me a dumbass when I told her that. I've been in therapy for a few months and it's helped a lot more than I thought it would. I've realized SM's behavior around me growing up was a lot worse than I always thought, and it's great to finally be able to get my feelings off my chest. Right now, I'm more than happy. I just married the most amazing woman ever, and I have the family I always dreamed of. None of us are perfect, but I never thought life would be this great to me. I'll stick around. Reddit is a lot more than I expected, but I can sleep peacefully now, so it's safe to say this will be my last update on this. Thank you all for the kindness and advice you gave me these months. I could have never expected the support I got from you guys, and I can't begin to describe how helpful it was. Seriously, thank you all. Edit 3 days later. Okay, I updated too soon. I didn't want to write another post, so I'll just add this here. My stepbrother called me earlier today. Apparently, he and SM had a fight and he wants to meet up. I agreed as long as it was just the two of us. We're meeting up for coffee on Wednesday. I have no idea what to expect, but even if he does apologize, I need to know he understands how and why he let us down. New update. Hey guys. I've been away from Reddit for a few months, due to some stuff at work. But a lot of people have been messaging me about my stepbrother, so I want to give you a small update. I've been busy and tired these days, so I might gloss over some details. Feel free to ask me anything. I first met my stepbrother for coffee back in August. He'd had a fight with SM and the RO was brought up. She'd lied to him about some details, accusing Luke of picking on my baby, badmouthing Jane and more, but this time, he managed to force her to tell him the truth. My stepbrother started to reevaluate his relationship with his mother. After talking to his therapist and his friends about it, as well as the way she'd raised him, he finally accepted I wasn't exaggerating about what she did to Luke. He wanted to talk to me back in June, but didn't want to distract me and Jane from the wedding. Me and my stepbrother spent the last 4 months working on rebuilding our relationship. We've been meeting for coffee or lunch and discussing his mother and what she did to our lives and my kids. Jane started joining us in October, and the kids saw him again for the first time 2 weeks ago. Things were awkward between us for a while, but we're good now. He's also making amends with my sister. In early November, he completely cut contact with SM. Jane and the kids are doing amazing. Luke turned 5 in September, and our baby will be 2, holy crap, in early February. We're spending the holidays with Jane's family in Brazil, while my stepbrother stays with his girlfriend. Things are great, that's all. I'm signing off for now. I'll let you know if anything happens. Happy holidays everyone. Best wishes to all of you. My wife cheated while I grieved my brother's death, blamed me. Then years later, at a wedding, she tried to reconcile, but my new life shocked her. I, 32M, had been with my wife, Teresa, 30F, for 8 years and married for 4. We met at a party hosted by a mutual friend during our sophomore year in college. I was immediately taken to her confident personality and sharp wit. Teresa was studying business, while I was studying engineering. We bonded over our mutual enjoyment of outdoor activities and sampling new foods. Our first date was a disaster. I lost my money and spilled wine on her dress, but Teresa shrugged it off, and we wound up spending hours roaming around campus and talking. I realized she was exceptional right away. Teresa's drive and ambition struck me as our relationship progressed. She hailed from a working-class family and was driven to pursue a good career. I loved how she managed her academics, a part-time job, and internships. Teresa pushed me out of my comfort zone by encouraging me to apply for competitive internships and leadership positions in student organizations. After graduation, we both found nice employment in the city, Teresa with a lighting company, and I at an engineering firm. We moved in together after a year and got engaged soon after. Our wedding was a modest, intimate gathering of close friends and family. Teresa was lovely in her plain white outfit, and I recall feeling like the luckiest man alive. Our first couple years of marriage were great. We both advanced in our careers, which enabled us to travel and enjoy life in the city. We had a wonderful group of friends and frequently hosted dinner parties or game nights at our home. Teresa and I spoke effectively and rarely fought. When we disagreed, we always tried to listen to each other and find a solution. Teresa's independence was one of my favorite aspects of her personality. We both cherished our personal time and hobbies. Teresa enjoyed yoga and painting, while I enjoyed basketball and tinkering with vintage cars. We supported each other's interests and struck a healthy balance between couple and individual activities. Everything changed when Mason, my older brother, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Mason and I had always been quite close. He was not only my brother, he was also my best friend, confidant, and role model. Mason was always there for me growing up. He taught me how to ride a bike, assisted me with my homework, and offered advice on everything from school to relationships. When our parents divorced during my adolescence, Mason became my rock. He was attending college at the time, but he called me every day to check in. He even came home on weekends to see whether I was all right. Mason was the one who encouraged me to apply to college and assisted me with moving into my dorm. At my wedding, his best man speech moved everyone to tears. Happy tears, naturally. Mason's diagnosis hit me like a truck. He had always been the picture of health. He ran marathons, ate properly, and never smoked. It appeared so unjust. I recall sitting in the doctor's office with him and his wife Sarah, feeling as if the world was collapsing on us. Since then, I've spent as much time as possible with Mason. I drove him to his chemotherapy appointments, stayed with him in the hospital, and attempted to lift his spirits. Teresa was initially helpful, accompanying me on visits to Mason and assisting Sarah with food and chores. But as the weeks grew into months, Teresa began to protest. She claimed I was spending too much time with Mason and neglected our relationship. I tried to explain how vital it was for me to be there for my brother, but Teresa appeared to resent the time I was away from her. We began bickering more frequently, generally over my schedule or her feeling neglected. I tried to balance time with Mason and Teresa, but it was really difficult. Mason's condition was fast deteriorating, and I wanted to be as present for him as possible. At the same time, I felt awful about not giving Teresa the attention she craved. It was a no-win scenario. Despite rigorous therapy, Mason died 8 months after being diagnosed. I was absolutely devastated. Mason had been such a constant in my life that I couldn't imagine the world without him. The loss devastated me, and I sank into a profound despair. I took a leave of absence from work and spent the majority of my time at home. Some days, I could hardly get out of bed. Everything reminded me of Mason, TV shows we used to watch together, private jokes we shared, and even particular foods he enjoyed. The grief was intense. Teresa attempted to be helpful at first, but her patience ran out quickly. She kept trying to persuade me to get over it and resume our normal social life. She planned events and invited friends over, but I couldn't bring myself to socialize. Teresa seemed to take it personally and accused me of pushing her away. This carried on for around 3 months. I knew Teresa was having a difficult time, but I was doing my best to cope with this enormous loss. I was attending a bereavement counselor and attempting to process my emotions, but healing takes time. Teresa grew increasingly distant and unpleasant. Then one day, I received a call from Liam, Mason's best buddy since boyhood. Liam had been like another brother to me growing up, and he'd been a huge help after Mason's death. However, this call was different. Liam's voice was uncertain when he informed me he saw Teresa at a motel with another man. I did not want to believe it at first. I absolutely believed Teresa and couldn't picture her cheating, but Liam emailed me a photo he had taken, and there was no disputing it. Teresa was in a passionate embrace with a man I didn't recognize, and they were going to enter a hotel room. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. How could Teresa do this to me, especially because I was grieving for my brother? I sat in stunned silence for hours, staring at the snapshot and attempting to make sense of it. When Teresa arrived home that evening, I confronted her. I showed her the photograph and asked for an explanation. She initially denied it, claiming that it was not what it appeared to be. But when I questioned her, she broke down in tears and admitted to having an affair with a coworker for the past 2 months. Teresa's excuses made me feel awful. She claimed she felt lonely and ignored when I was grieving. She complained that I was not providing her needs and that she deserved happiness. She even had the arrogance to claim that I had pushed her to cheat by being emotionally unavailable. I was infuriated and heartbroken. I told Teresa to leave and that I wanted a divorce. She asked me to rethink and give her another opportunity. She screamed and pleaded, claiming it was a mistake and that she still loved me, but I knew I could never trust her again after this betrayal. The next day, Teresa called and texted me nonstop, attempting to explain herself. She claimed I was being harsh and exaggerating. She claimed that I had emotionally abandoned her by initially spending so much time with Mason and then withdrawing when grieving. She tried to blame me for encouraging her to cheat. I'm at a total loss. How could the lady I loved and trusted for 8 years do this to me, especially when I was grieving for my brother? And now she's attempting to blame me. Is it abnormal for me to refuse to even consider reconciliation? I feel like my entire universe has been broken. I keep revisiting our relationship in my head, wondering if there were any indicators I missed. Was Teresa always so selfish, and I just didn't notice, or did Mason's illness and death transform her? I'm doubting everything now. Part of me is upset with myself for not anticipating this. Perhaps if I had worked harder to balance my time between Mason and Teresa, this would not have occurred. But then I remember that a loving partner would have understood and supported me through such a difficult time. I haven't informed many people about Teresa's affair yet. I'm humiliated and don't want to deal with everyone's responses, but I know I'll need help moving forward, especially if I go through with the divorce. I am not sure what to do next. The prospect of going through a divorce while still grieving Mason is daunting, but I also can't imagine remaining with someone who could betray me like this. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you all for your encouraging words and advice. To clarify a few points, Teresa knew Mason and I were close. She'd met him several times and appeared to like him. She was in the hospital with me when he died. During my grief, I never entirely shut Teresa out. We continued to live together, have meals together and so on. I was just not in the mood to go out or be personal. Before confronting Teresa, I performed some research and discovered that the affair had been going on for 4 months, not 2 as she stated. So it began shortly after Mason died. Teresa and I had no major relationship troubles prior to this. We had regular disputes, but nothing significant. She never expressed feeling ignored until Mason became ill. I appreciate everyone's feedback as I absorb this betrayal. I'll give an update whenever I have more information. Update 1. It's been around 2 months since my original post. A lot has transpired, therefore I'd like to provide an update. I filed for divorce soon after learning Teresa's adultery. It was not an easy decision, but I knew I could never trust her again after what she had done. Teresa's reaction to the divorce petition was a mix of outrage and desperate pleas. She kept calling and messaging me, alternately offering emotional apologies and accusing rants. Teresa showed up unannounced at my office. She made a scene in the lobby, crying and imploring me to give her another chance. My coworkers were uncomfortable, and I was mortified. I had to have security escort her out. After that episode, I banned her phone number for my own sanity. Teresa left our house and moved in with her folks. I've been staying in the house, but it feels empty and filled with sad memories. I'm thinking about selling it and finding a new location, but the prospect of going through another major life upheaval is daunting. I learned from common friends that Teresa was telling everyone that I had mentally abused her by abandoning her emotionally. She stated that I had refused to speak or work on our marriage, forcing her to seek consolation elsewhere. It was infuriating to hear these lies circulated about me. Some of our friends have chosen sides in the divorce. The majority have been supportive of me, although a handful believe Teresa's version of events. I've lost a handful of friendships as a result of this, which hurts even more than everything else. I'm trying to concentrate on the folks who have supported me. The divorce process has been messy. Teresa is claiming that she is entitled to half of everything, including Mason's inheritance. My lawyer assures me that she has no legal claim to it, yet she is delaying the process regardless. It feels like a slap in the face that she would attempt to benefit from my brother's death after betraying me. In the aftermath of everything, I've been dealing with a lot of despair and trust issues. Some days, it's difficult to get out of bed. I lost weight since I rarely eat. My performance at work has diminished, but happily, my supervisor has remained understanding. One positive development. I reunited with an old high school classmate, Olivia. We ran into each other at a coffee shop and started conversing. Olivia lost her mother to cancer a few years ago, so she understood exactly what I was going through with Mason. We've been hanging out as friends, and it's great to have someone who gets it. Olivia and I have a lot in common, something I had forgotten about. We were both on the debate team in high school and enjoy watching old movies. She has been introducing me to new music and podcasts, which has provided a wonderful distraction. Olivia doesn't force me to talk about Teresa or the divorce, but she is an excellent listener when I need to vent. Teresa flipped out when she discovered I was spending time with Olivia. She arrived at my house unexpectedly, yelling that I was a hypocrite for moving on so soon while vilifying her. She accused me of having an affair with Olivia, which is completely false. I had to threaten to call the cops before she left. The situation has been a nightmare, but I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm working on healing and discovering who I am outside of my connection with Teresa. I appreciate my family and friends' support during this trying time. I've been attempting to honor Mason's memory in constructive ways. I donated to the cancer facility where he was treated and have been volunteering whenever I can. Mason's wife, Sarah, and their children have been an excellent source of support. We have dinner together frequently, and it's helpful to talk about Mason with others who care about him as much as I do. There are still times when I miss Teresa and the life we shared, but then I remember her betrayal and how she has acted after I discovered the truth. It helps to emphasize that I'm making the correct decision by terminating the marriage. I'm not ready to consider dating again. The idea of putting myself out there and risking another heartbreak is daunting. For the time being, my primary emphasis is on reconstructing my life and recuperating from everything that has occurred. I will provide another update after the divorce is official. Thank you again to everyone who has expressed kindness and advice. It truly helps to know that I'm not alone in this. Update 2. It has been around 6 months since my last update. I was relieved when the divorce was finally finalized last week. Teresa fought me every step of the way, attempting to prolong the process and collect more money. In the end, we split our joint assets 50-50, and she did not receive any of my Mason inheritance. Teresa returned to my office the day after her divorce became final. She was crying and begging me to reconsider, claiming she had made a terrible mistake but still loved me. I politely but firmly informed her that it was finished and requested her to leave. She refused, raising a commotion, and security had to remove her out. It was humiliating, so I took the rest of the day off work. My employer summoned me to his office the next day. I was concerned that he would be disturbed by the disruption, but he was actually very understanding. He mentioned that he had a messy divorce years ago and offered me some time off if I needed it. I was appreciative for his help and understanding. On a good note, Olivia has been doing well. What began as a friendship has gradually grown into something more. We've been officially dating for approximately 2 months now. Olivia is compassionate, sympathetic, and patient with me while I work through my trust difficulties. She encourages me to talk about Mason and never makes me feel awful for continuing to grieve. Olivia and I have been taking it slowly, which I love. We enjoy cooking together, taking long walks, and binge-watching TV shows. She's been assisting me in rediscovering old hobbies that I had abandoned throughout my marriage, such as playing guitar and photography. I've also focused on myself. I joined a gym, began learning guitar, and have traveled extensively. It is fantastic to rediscover who I am as a person. I went on a solo excursion to the mountains, which I had always wanted to do but Teresa was not interested in. It was pleasant to be alone with my thoughts and environment. Teresa continues to disparage me to anyone who will listen. She has told common acquaintances that I'm cold and unfeeling, that I never truly loved her, and that Olivia and I must have had an affair prior to our divorce. It's frustrating, but I'm trying not to get involved in her drama. I have begun spending more time with Mason's family. His children are growing up so quickly, and it's bittersweet to watch them hit milestones that Mason isn't present for. We've developed a ritual of having Sunday dinners together, telling tales about Mason and keeping his memory alive. Mason would have celebrated his birthday last month. It was a difficult day, but Olivia recommended we do something to honor Dad. We ended up organizing a modest charity race in Mason's honor, with funds benefiting cancer research. It felt amazing to turn my grief into something positive. Overall, I'm a lot better off than I was a year ago. I still miss Mason deeply, but the pain is not as intense. I am cautiously optimistic about my future with Olivia, and I'm pleased of myself for holding firm and not allowing Teresa to mislead me into reconciling. There are still difficult days, of course. Sometimes I wake up angry at Teresa for abandoning our marriage. Other times, I miss the future we envisioned together. But I'm learning to sit with these emotions without allowing them to overwhelm me. Thank you again to everyone in our community for their support. It helped me get through some difficult times. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm feeling optimistic for the first time in a long time. Update 3. It's been almost a year since my previous update. Life has returned to normal, and I'd want to express my last opinions on the matter. Olivia and I are still together and going strong. We just moved in together and adopted a dog. She's been a tremendous help through everything. I still have moments of insecurity and doubt, but Olivia is always kind and supportive. Our relationship isn't perfect, we've had our share of arguments and challenges, but we always try to talk freely and work through problems together. It's wonderful to be around someone who values honesty and mutual respect. I met Teresa at a mutual friend's wedding a few months ago. It was awkward, but we managed to remain cordial. She apologized again for her behavior during our divorce and stated that she was in therapy, working on herself. I wished her well but made it obvious that I was not interested in rekindling any kind of relationship, including friendship. Seeing Teresa evoked a variety of feelings. Part of me was outraged again, remembering her betrayal and the suffering she caused, but I also felt a sense of closure. Talking to her made me realize how much I'd grown and healed in the last few years. The pain over Mason is coming in waves now. Some days are more difficult than others, particularly around his birthday and the anniversary of his death, but I've discovered healthy methods to cope and celebrate his memory. I volunteer at the hospital where he was treated and have grown close to his wife and children. Mason's oldest son at 14, has been struggling lately. He's been acting out at school and is dealing with rage issues. I've been spending more time with him, taking him to basketball games and simply being there to talk. It feels amazing to be there for him in the same way Mason has always been for me. Olivia and I have discussed our future together. We are not in a rush to marry, but we both see this as a long-term relationship. We've spoken about having kids eventually, something I never imagined I'd desire after what happened with Teresa. It's hard to think of opening my heart again, but Olivia makes me feel protected. Work is going great. I was promoted a few months ago, which has been both exhilarating and challenging. The new work requires more travel, which has been difficult for Olivia and me, but we're figuring out how to balance our time together with our respective activities. I'm attempting to reconnect with past hobbies and interests. I joined a local amateur baseball league, which I enjoyed in college but gave up when life became busy. It's been exciting to get back on the field and meet new people. Olivia attends my sports whenever she can, cheering me on from the stands. Looking back, I see how toxic my relationship with Teresa had been, even before the adultery. We had grown apart, but we were both afraid to accept it. While I will never excuse her affair, I have accepted what happened and am looking ahead. There are still instances when I think, what if? What if Mason didn't get sick? What if I had noticed Teresa moving away sooner? What if I'd done things differently? But I am learning to let go of such thoughts and concentrate on the present. I am not the same person I was when I wrote the first post 2 years ago. The anguish and betrayal transformed me, but not all of the changes were negative. I've learned a lot about myself, resilience, and what I truly want from a spouse and in life. To anyone going through a similar situation, it does get better. Take the time to heal, surround yourself with supporting friends, and don't be scared to start afresh. You deserve happiness and someone who actually appreciates you. This will be my final update on this storyline. Thank you again for your kindness and encouragement over the last few years. It made a huge impact during the worst periods. I am looking forward to the future, whatever it may hold. I discovered my wife's affair during her writing workshop, hired a P1, gathered evidence, and vanished without a trace before she returned home. Though my friends call me AB, never Andy, I go by Andrew Baker. Every now and then there's a nasty drunk or uneducated man trying to act too familiar and calls me Andy. So Andy, what's your job? They probe. I reply, I made this neat little tool for cops to check drunk individuals from 40 feet away. They have even begun to link them to radars throughout town. That typically shuts them down. That gadget isn't real, though, should you still not know it yet. I obviously have not much tolerance for stupidity. Lie to me, and things go bad. I'm a straightforward guy, not complicated at all. I am content in my career and lead a simple life. I am an engineer employed by a large national corporation with offices scattered over the nation. I have pals, and although I'm not a heavy drinker, I do have a sporadic beer. Though that's my struggle, honestly I tend more toward nachos. I try to keep myself in reasonable form for my age since, if I let it spiral out of hand, I will gain weight. Every chance I had, I used to go sailing. Now, having a wife and 2 small girls takes up a lot of time. I sold the yacht at last. That was only one of the concessions I have voluntarily given over the years in order to spend quality time with the individuals truly important to me. For 25 years, Karen and I have been contentedly married. Her level of education is high school teacher. Right now our 2 girls are at college. While her younger sister Denise is in Boston University, Claire is a student at Brown University in Rhode Island. I most certainly couldn't afford those pricey universities, but fortunately the girls are committed students with outstanding scholarships. Our house is in North Carolina, more precisely the Research Triangle. It revolves on some outstanding Raleigh institutions and is flanked by first-rate high-tech businesses. One may live and work here quite nicely. Though it would just make me hungry, I could tell you about Carolina BBQ. When the daughters chose institutions up north, I was a little let down, but I know they had to venture beyond their comfort zone, and that is eventually a good thing. Our daughters are wonderful, smart, humorous, lovely young women with strong moral principles. Though I am daily concerned about their safety, I have faith in their judgment. Seeing children mature and start their path towards independence meant that my wife and I could at last have some alone time once more. For some time, I had been excited about this stage. I pictured going home every evening to a loving wife who would concentrate on me, and vice versa, with both girls away at college. I saw us picking back up our relationship and having happy days. It resembled almost exactly being newlyweds once more. We could have dinners out, go to movies and plays, and at last rediscover each other the way I had always wanted. But reality turned out very differently than I had imagined. To be honest, thinking back on that first year of an empty nest, I saw Karen changing. Her hobbies seemed to be changing. Although the change was slow, in time it became increasingly clear. At first I saw these as her means of blossoming now our girls were no longer living with us. But finally I came to see that her priorities and values were undergoing a major change. English teacher Karen specializes in creative writing. She is fairly speaking a frustrated writer as well. She never really had the opportunity to write as she desired being a teacher and young mother. Karen writes during the summer and whenever she could spare an hour or two, but so far not much has come out of it. She liked to compile rejection letters after sending her essays and short tales to literary publications. Her ideal magnificent masterwork was never realized. Though as a writer she has never ventured beyond predictable and perhaps too theatrical tales, I will admit I enjoy reading her. She has a romanticized view of what a writer should be, and covertly I believe she is more drawn to the concept than the actual work. Still, I'm happy too if she is happy. Karen has belonged to several writing clubs most of our marriage. Aiming to help each other's writing, these are meetings of people who come together to offer comments, ideas, and conversations about their work. While some of these organizations seem to be more like clubs of mutual adoration, others seem really useful to me. Her last group, the one she belonged to when everything broke down, contained components of both. They alternated visiting each other's houses, and during their encounters here, I would try to give them privacy. I tried once but stopped since Karen and a few others objected. There are about 10 people in Karen's present writing group, men as well as women. While some of them I could live without, others I enjoy. When you meet them, half of them really are relatively average and the other half really stand out. For example, the Lady Reggie is rather passionate in creating biographies and history. She still manages to captivate readers despite doing scholarly-oriented book writing and serious research. I have loved reading all of her works. Betty likes to write fantasy. She tends more toward the talking unicorn type than I would have her as the next J.K. Rowling. She's nice, and her writing seems to be mostly for her own enjoyment. Who can dispute that? Bill takes on the group's know-it-all function. Apart from that, he appears all good. A bit of that goes a long way. Then Frank comes in. The first time I saw him, I felt scared. Ever since, those alarms have kept ringing in my head. It was very evident when I met Frank that I was being introduced to him rather than the other way round. Examining me, he asked, "So Andy, what's your profession?" I looked at my wife. She shook her head and somewhat frowned. I said simply, "I'm an engineer." Frank gave no smile, more of a smirk in reply. Though not precisely out of earshot, I said I had given up trying to interact with their group and preferred to keep rather hidden and quiet. Until they forget, I usually find myself in the next room silently working or on the rear porch with a window open so I could hear their talk. Frank seems to share private jokes and a connection that makes me uneasy when he talks to Karen, early on I found. He occasionally makes her ego stronger and other times seems as though he understands her inner thoughts in a way I value less. He mentions past talks that seem to be only between them, and I get the sense that the rest of the group doesn't recall those times. Although it's only a feeling, I have informed her I find it unpleasant. She dismisses my worries, and I know not to press the topic. She knows my feelings, the rest is up to her. During its sessions, the group performs a set ritual. Their work session ends with some wine and relaxation. It was during this period that I came to see some of them were just acting. It took place in the midst of the spring semester, close to early March, when the subject turned to the way actual writers lived. Oh, all the eminent writers were alcoholics. That's right, they drank in the afternoons and evenings and penned in the mornings. It awakens the mind to fresh concepts and helps one to relax. Their creative ideas then start to flow in the mornings and they start writing. Actually, the really great writers all went through love relationships. That's the real inspiration for them. Frank was saying just that. Thanks for providing, Frank. I'm beginning to get your perspective. Karen's words then really hit me like a gut punch. Indeed, exactly. The real inspiration is found in the intensity and the thrill of the unknown, that is, in keeping it all secret from everyone else. I persuaded myself it was only a joke as some of them laughed and others didn't. Still, I listened in on their chat all through the evening. Maybe we should all have a wild night of passion sometime and then each write the next great American novel. Bill had that. I wasn't sure if he meant it humoristically or not. Not great writing comes from character defects. Features like humanity, empathy, and facing the riddles of the unknown really help to create great stories. I said before that Betty appealed to me. Memorable tales are about conquering obstacles, aiming for excellence in spite of all the odds, and leaving the planet in a better condition than it was in before. Well, perhaps if you conjure the right enchantment, we can avoid all the hassle. Again, that was that jackass Frank. To their shame, some in the group seemed to find that humorous. I had a hunch Reggie didn't either, and I'm not quite sure Betty did. They were debating writer drinking practices and affairs, and I kept listening without offering anything. Then I overheard a fascinating bit of their chat. Is anyone else planning to apply for the Illinois Writer Workshop this summer? Frank was now speaking once more. Oh, I turned in my application already. Keeping my fingers crossed will help them to accept me. 6 weeks of just writing and talking with other authors could truly change things for me. This was Karen. I had never heard of her before. Frank caught it up straight immediately. I am sure they will welcome you. Your work has improved really dramatically this past year. I think you will get admitted. I've also applied. I'm not as sure I'll be in though. My own feeling of internal radar for stupidity was off target. Frank, really, when did you start to get so modest? Though at this point I still loved and trusted my wife, I didn't like what I was hearing. Trust is basic when you have been married for the length of time we have. You ask not, is she up to no good? Not even cross your head the idea. Your mate is your other half. Marriage is a partnership. She has proved her dedication year after year. All you really want is for her to discover the success and happiness she so deserves, or at least that is what you think. Later on though, everything falls apart when you find your confidence has been betrayed. Update 1. I let myself ignore the overheard exchange from that evening over time. As I said, I trusted my wife entirely. Some younger males might not understand it, but trust becomes a way of life rather than only a decision after being married for more than 20 years. Late April found me finishing some outside gardening when I decided to call it a day and head indoors. Reaching for the kitchen door, I discovered my wife on the phone exclaiming, "I can't wait, 6 whole weeks without any responsibilities, no commitments, and no one waiting for me to get back." At the last bit I started to perk. I stopped in front of her and listened. Absolutely. Those 6 weeks will be the most self-indulgent of my life. I owe it to myself. You too owe it to yourself. Not one of these appealed to me. I walked through the kitchen opening the door. Karen appeared shocked. Well, I have to sprint. AB is here and I have to start cooking dinner. She grabbed fast. I said, who was that on the phone? Oh, just Regina. We were discussing the shortly closing of schools. Like heck it was, I said. I wanted to probe her about some of her remarks, particularly one about no one waiting for me to come home, but I realized that tonight the truth might be in scarce supply. Though I tried to hide it for the moment, my attitude worsened. Dinner later that evening, the other shoe dropped. AB, the amazing news I got today will not surprise you. Recall that Illinois writer workshop for which you applied? Come on, you hardly pay attention to me. To be honest, I had heard about the workshop before. But that was only because I had overheard her talking about it over a month ago. I don't remember you stressing it. Sure, I did. I applied for a 6-week workshop for authors. At the University of Illinois, it falls mid-June through late July. Their lecturers give lectures. They also bring in eminent authors for seminars and debate forums. We then get rather busy writing. I was accepted and this is an amazing chance. That sounds excellent, honey. We could certainly handle it financially. Perhaps I might join you and take a little time off from work. I would really enjoy listening to those authors speak. Her response appeared odd. Well, we can think about it. I won't have much free time to spend with you over the very demanding 6 weeks. My gut was tingling once more. Well, you know I'm not exacting. I could be the group's coffee guy. She gave a really tense smile. That may be lovely, darling. Let us monitor things. Such deflections have come from both sides. I knew what they meant. She was making sure I wouldn't wind up traveling to Illinois with her. I get the sense you would rather I didn't go with you. Oh no, it is not like that. I merely worry you might find it boring. You're into computers and circuits, and this is basically writers discussing major concepts. I kept that to myself. Back off, I thought. When I was being excluded, I knew. I said, ending the discussion, I'm sure you'll excel. After Karen retired to bed later that evening, I checked our phone records online. AT&T provides that capability. All incoming and outgoing calls as well as text messaging are logged. When I looked over the phone log, the call I had cut off wasn't with Reggie. Or if it was, Frank's phone started it. When you find your wife lying and learning she has plans to exclude you, it's amazing how quickly trust can fall apart after a quarter century of marriage. Weeks went by, and she appeared fixated on the workshop's talks. She rejected the idea every time I tried several times to talk about maybe visiting at some time or going with her. She next moved from rationalizing to manipulating. AB, I have some interesting news. Late June saw me get you and Jake 2 passes to a fishing camp in northern Canada. You can take Jake, and both of you will love fishing for those large brown fish you constantly mention. Although it was very costly, I wanted to show thanks for your understanding of the writer's workshop. And I felt a little bad since you wouldn't be having fun, hence I want you to go and have a fantastic time. We may then discuss our experiences when I get back. Something didn't seem right. Thanks, sweetheart, that shows consideration of you. To be honest, I would enjoy your company more. AB, we have seen this. Simply said, it makes no sense. I will be working all through. I would feel guilty ignoring you in such a manner. I looked at her face and eyes momentarily, trying to make sense of it. Was it contempt? Thanks, honey. Canada seems entertaining. My voice was devoid of energy. I was mentally organizing my choices. A surprise trip to Illinois took the front stage. Well, you could at least say it while grinning. Those tickets cost a lot of money, so you should be glad. Sure, sounds fantastic. To tinker for the evening, I descended to the basement. Our ancient house had one of those floor grates in the corridor. Originally, the first floor was heated by it, allowing warm air to pass from the furnace room. I first made a point not to step on it inadvertently, but with time I grew used to it and forgot about its existence. There is also the phone in the hall. I was quietly working in the basement, thinking about what to do when I heard Karen on a call. Yes, I handed him the passes. He remains unsure. I keep telling him he won't love it. I'm not sure exactly. No, I cannot merely advise him against showing up. I want it too, but I also want to stay married later on. I simply need him to allow me some time to enjoy myself over a few weeks. I have earned it, I am due. I do want those weeks with you as well. All fine, let us wait a while. I believe he will show up. All right, darling, I miss you too. For me tonight, write something outstanding. She cut off the call with that. I got a lump in my throat. I'm not naive, I hear cheating and know it's not good. Karen either was thinking about or in an affair. Anything less, and she would still have a lot of work to do explaining. It took me 20 minutes to collect my ideas, but I decided that for now I had to start acting like the kind of liar I've always hated. At least for the moment I had to hide my goals until I had a strategy. In a very loving voice I said, Karen, I'm heading over to see Jake and give him the good news. As I phoned upstairs. Oh, that's fantastic, darling. Enjoy, she said. And I was out the basement door exactly like that. I required distance. Seeing Jake was only a pretext. Thinking about it, I knew I needed someone to confide in. And Jake had been my closest buddy from early life. "You're kidding me," Jake responded, not dodging around the issue. "No way, I won't buy it. She would never turn on you, AB." "Well, she's certainly working hard to keep me away from that workshop, and she's calling someone baby. And it's definitely not me." We merely sat there, silent. Most men want from a friend simply sitting with them and sharing the suffering. "You have to talk to her about this, AB. Assuming the worst without knowledge of the truth will not help you through the next few months." "And what is she likely to say?" "When I review the phone records tonight, how much would you want to wager that Frank was not the one she spoke with? Frank she called baby, and Frank she's plotting with wasn't Frank." "I am not laying that bet. What then is your intended course of action?" "I'm going to grab a seat and have a frank conversation. After 25 years of marriage, that's what you do. I'll tell her I love her, let her know I'm offended she doesn't want me to travel with her, and I'll ask her straightforwardly what she's up to, that she doesn't want me there." "Do you suppose she would tell you the truth?" "Nope, but I'll tell her the truth. Even if some of it isn't what she wants to hear. She'll know how much I love her. She will understand that cheating on me will destroy our relationship. She will then most likely try to persuade me that I should simply go fishing since I am seeing things." I stopped just for a moment. "By the way, one ticket is for you. I have two for a fishing camp in northern Canada in late June." "Nice," Jake said, catching himself. "I mean, friend, here I am to help you." I laughed a little bit. I have always known exactly where his allegiance resides. Before I left for home, we spoke, exchanged ideas, and drank a few beers for 3 hours. I opened up about practically everything. After dinner, asking Karen to come sit with me in the living room, I pushed back a few things. "Sweetheart, I have some quite major worries. About the writer's workshop, I don't think you have been quite open with me. You mentioned it to me only once you had already scheduled a trip, even though I overheard you talking about it with your writer group back in March. I have to admit, I didn't find it funny when you mentioned how common affairs are among brilliant authors. Frank and you have been talking about your vacation, but when I ask, you lie and say it's someone else. You know how I feel about that guy. Then, when you told me you were accepted, you seemed deliberately aloof and discouraged me from participating. Though I am not here, I wanted to partake in this fascinating trip with you. Rather than thinking about it, you set plans for me to be somewhere else without even talking to me. Just committing on my behalf. You seem to be attempting to make sure I won't be around when you're in Illinois. You haven't been quite honest with me, hence I'm beginning to wonder if you have been entirely loyal. AB, I would never be dishonest with you and I have never treated you that way. What has drawn you in? Being your husband, all I want is for you to have fun. That you could believe something like that about me truly hurts. I have no control over my emotions or what sets things off. You know, I love you. Since our first meeting, I have loved you. Nevertheless, I cannot just ignore the concept of treachery. Are you hoping for that, Karen? Is this writer's workshop your haven from our marriage? Update 2. Our dialogue came to an end with that. Not more loving or sympathetic conversation. She started screaming and spent the remainder of the evening either shouting or silently. And for the next week, it was silent. She was trying to get me to turn back down by applying the silence treatment, thereby punishing me. It did not work though. Actually, it reinforced my beliefs solely. But I knew I wasn't moving in this direction and finally I let her think she had achieved success. Not much I could do to stop her from cheating if she intended to do so. The phone call I listened in on even hinted she might have done it already. I finally thanked her for the vacation to Canada, but my attitude stayed dark until the trip was finished. She changed her attitude fast and behaved like a devoted wife to support the behavior she wanted from me once she had what she wanted. She seemed to flick a switch, which just made me more suspicious. When I am the recipient of manipulation, I know it is happening. I asked a colleague who he consulted when he suspected his wife of cheating. The Illinois Writers' Workshop was just 500 meters away and I knew none there. I took his advice and the person he suggested was Illinois-based. I contacted them asking for help. The fact that the session occurred on a state university campus made its location favorable. Although they couldn't take part in the program, the PI's agents could roam the campus and monitor the rooms as needed. The participants would eat in the university cafeterias, go to nearby clubs, and share a big dorm with other students. This gave room for covert monitoring. With modern tools, some of these kids would actually be working for me. Our daughters decided to stay in their colleges for the summer to work in research labs under their professors as the school year was drawing to a conclusion. We were still empty nesters then. I deliberately tried to invite her to dinners made at home and show her around. She appeared to be enjoying everything, Hence I began to think I was improving. But every time I told her I loved her, I felt her dismissive I know attitude. The fragments of the puzzle came together gradually. She had merely taken me for granted, not stopped loving me. I knew her safety net was consistent and familiar. She knew she could go away, find thrills, break off our marriage, and I would be waiting when she got back. This insight brought my ideas into line. I knew I couldn't leave things unanswered the day she left. Her shuttle for the airport came as we stood close to the door. I begged and said, "Please don't do anything that could ruin us," tightly gripping her. She flashed me an annoyed glance in answer and retorted, "I'm tired of you not trusting me. We will have a major discussion about this when I get back." She snatched her luggage, kissed me quickly on the cheek and hurried for the shuttle. She left without ever looking back at me. I sensed then that my marriage was about to end. After 25 years and our 2 grown kids, it seemed our relationship was going away with little notice. The private investigator did his work really well. He said they were in an unfamiliar area so they didn't bother covering their acts. Karen has to have taken off her wedding bands on the plane since they vanished off her finger when she arrived at the studio. She claimed freely to be newly divorced, and Frank and my wife started to be inseparable right away. They were together all the time, kissing, holding hands, and behaving as passionate high school students would have. My PI cleverly set a tiny video camera in their dorm hallway. Karen and Frank only used one of their designated rooms, although each had one. Sometimes her chamber, sometimes his, but always they stayed late together. Although I knew what was happening in those shared dorm rooms, my PI and his crew went to considerable measures to verify my suspicions. Frank and my wife left early one evening before it was dark. 2 agents, looking like normal college students, sat against the corridor wall and surreptitiously slipped a tiny fisheye camera under the door. Frank was seen in action for 20 minutes using this gadget. The video quality was shockingly clear, and he clearly hadn't used protection when he finished. That for me was the last straw. I was clearly done with this marriage. Anything else the team found served only as more proof to support my position. Regular updates from my private investigator kept me informed, but after that first week her future was obvious and my decision was taken. Beginning the early days of her workshop, I spent time implementing my plan. I wanted to be virtually invisible, almost ghostly. I would have vanished and there would be no turning back. No falsehoods, no ultimatums, no protracted negotiations, explanations, justifications, or attempts at reconciliation when she got back. The sole outcome would be divorce. My marriage was about to fall apart. Though it does not fade fast, what is love without trust? An unfaithful wife cannot define a future. Some could contend that my answer was weak. They could advise she deserves horrible humiliation, physical punishment, and total poverty. Ultimately though, the law would forbid me from pursuing any of that, and I had no intention of ruining the rest of my life by seeking such cruel revenge on my adulterous wife and her lover. Eliminating the one thing she always depended on, the consistent presence that comforted, encouraged, uplifted and inspired her, would be my payback. I was walking away from myself. Frank lacked suitability for a catch. Long term, he was unable to meet her needs. Where would a 50-year-old divorced mother find emotional stability and love? I not give a damn. She no longer would be of interest to me. My private investigator would bring me more images, recordings, and proof of treachery by the person who promised me allegiance above all else every few days. The pictures and videos in the reports were very upsetting to view. The reports themselves were challenging to read. Especially when they covered me, the audio recordings were the toughest to handle. He is always emailing me about the fish he is catching and how incredible it is up there. Nearly every day he thanks me, she laughs. Frank joined in the laughing. He's clueless. You escape from his irritation by keeping him in the dark and treating him like a mushroom. He could as well have fun right now. I'll face that geek about his charges when I get back. How dare he continually charge me of cheating? But you're momentarily straying from our marriage, correct, beautiful? Alternatively, is another woman sleeping next night on my bed? She laughed at that, really. Well, I won't put up with that even if he may be onto something. Damn it, I'm a writer. His circuits and computer lingo are holding me back with their millimeters and micro thingamajigs. About huge ideas, what does he know? Update 3. As long as my existence stayed linked to hers, none of the several ways I considered for retribution would really satisfy me. One decision remained, and I started the process of separating from her. I explained everything honestly to my supervisor. Having gone through something like this personally not so long ago, he could appreciate it. He set up a transfer for me to show up at Portland, Maine, our corporate office. I thought the concept was interesting. I knew the folks there were professional, competent, and I liked their company. I found attractions in the town and the state as well. To get half of the furniture and all of my personal stuff up north, I booked movers. I checked that my automobile was in good condition for the trip, then spoke with a lawyer to start the divorce process. Regarding money problems, Karen had a retirement account and her own insurance. I made my daughters the beneficiaries and deleted her name from every one of my possessions. For no alimony, I signed a quitclaim deed turning the house over to her. She would keep her automobile but have to deal with her own insurance. Keeping my plans understated, I intended to handle credit cards and bank accounts closer to the finish. From that point ahead, I concentrated on strengthening my will. I meant to call her to show my love and to find out how the workshop was going. Hearing her lies would help me to get more convinced that my behavior was justified. She didn't let down anyone. She reacted with fervor, said her love, and went out to dinner in less than 2 minutes. Later on, my private investigator told me Frank was right next to her, mocking gestures and knowing glances, which just confirmed my choice. She clearly saw the matter as a joke, which validated my direction in life. Later on, I decided to text her instead of calling since I wasn't sure I could control my feelings over the phone. Though in reality I sent Jake and his wife on such vacations, I would tell her about great fishing excursions. They enjoyed themselves thoroughly. Regarding his marriage, Jake made a smart decision. They promised to see me and I did pay them a farewell visit before I left. Her 6-week workshop was ending, and I finished my last assignments. I put a for sale sign from a buddy who works as a real estate agent in the front yard. She was ignorant of that aspect, but I couldn't really sell the house without her permission, especially since I had already transferred ownership to her. Her first sight upon returning home would be the sign. To help the house seem less like a house, I changed the locks. I created a copy of the PI's report and chose specific pictures from her trip, including graphic stills from the video shot taken under Frank's door. To let her know she had been found out, I left all of this on the dining room table. The movers had already relocated most of my stuff. They would keep it until I needed it. I packed just 2 pieces of luggage, a briefcase, a laptop, and a guitar. I absolutely had to have my guitar. Something so valuable could not be trusted to anybody else. Frank could be engaged with my wife, but I loved my guitar very much. Knowing she wouldn't be back until late that evening, my first thought was to leave the next morning. I would be long gone when she showed up. But the evening before I changed my mind. She could only wait and worry. I wanted her to feel the suffering right away. Along with the words "divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you," I emailed her 3 well-selected pictures of her with Frank. I chose one picture when they were almost close on the dance floor, obviously revealing she wasn't sporting her engagement and wedding rings. The second picture caught them holding hands as they entered his dorm room. The third was a crisp face-clear screenshot from the dorm room footage. She would see these pictures, and I hoped it would ruin her last beautiful night with Frank as they furiously looked for cameras that had already been taken down. Then I turned off my phone. Leaving the house our family had lived in for many years was a mix of grief, uncertainty, and newly acquired independence. All at once it seemed like the most difficult, uncertain, and freeing event of my life. My wife basically disappeared from my life. Though I hadn't personally caused it, it seemed as though she had died, not knowing the when or the why. The woman looking like my wife was someone I knew nothing about and I wanted no contact with. I was starting over and had no idea where I might be headed. Among the great loss, there was an unusual sense of emancipation. If only momentarily, the weight of dishonesty, treachery, and belittlement was offloaded from my shoulders. The sole expense was half of my life now unreachable. Late, but my mind was racing, so I drove almost 100 miles down the peaceful highway lost in contemplation till I came to a hotel for the evening. I was hoping for a real local breakfast restaurant, not for a chain motel. I searched for something real. I eventually found it and enjoyed what might be my final dish of grits for some time. My perspective changed and I started to rethink my path to Maine as I ate those grits. This signaled the beginning of my new life, and I had a long journey ahead. I had a 2-week window before employment began, so even if I could speed up my trip to Maine, fleeing my troubles, why accelerate? I needed time to gather my ideas, process her treachery and let the past go. I decided to go gradually. Enjoying the landscape on my northward drive and interacting with every state and its people as I passed through. My old life would give way to my new one this week. To be ready for a fresh start and clear myself of the ugly and blunders of my past, I meant to nurture my senses, including my taste buds. Wandering about Williamsburg among the summer throngs, the rest of the day was lost. I investigated the abilities of talented craftsmen and artists. I found somewhere to stay even though I had no reservation. My thoughts returned to my failing marriage only after a small dinner and settling in for the evening. She was probably going home about that time. Seeing the for sale sign on the front yard and knowing her keys wouldn't open the door, I wondered how she would respond. I traveled north along the winding roads toward Annapolis, Maryland's capital, the following day. Along Virginia's ancestral rivers, the York, Rappahannock and Potomac, which go into the Chesapeake Bay, I passed through little villages and old estates. Ahead, there was one road stretch headed toward my destiny. I would follow that meandering road, which led me from betrayal to a new chapter in my life. Update 4. At last turned on my cell phone, I sat in my hotel room in downtown Annapolis. It was, predictably, full with many missed calls, emails, and text messages. A few came from friends, most of them came from Karen. Despite it being difficult, I read and listened to every one of them. That was a step that was absolutely vital. Indeed, Karen was trying to persuade me that things were not as they seemed at first. She sent those texts from Illinois before going back home, then saw the remainder of the pictures and perused the PI's report. My pals were letting me know, meanwhile, that Karen was trying to find me by contacting everyone. She was looking in all the wrong places, little knowing it. Although Jake and his wife knew, I decided to deliberately keep the rest in the dark. Once I had been established, I would let them know. I knew immediately that I could not spend eternity ghostly. 2 calls from my girls started to worry me. Karen had gotten in touch with them trying to track me. As I wanted to do it in person, I had deliberately not notified them about my choice to leave their mother. I gently explained the matter to my daughters, though, since I cannot let them worry. Their mother could do such a thing, which infuriated them and made it difficult for them to believe. For this reason, I emailed them the identical images I had shown Karen the evening I left home together with the PI's report. They promised then not to tell their mother about my activities. One more missed call. My attorney told me Karen had been formally served with divorce papers. She knew now that I intended business. Frank's wife had also got a whole set of pictures, films, and audio recordings from his 6-week program. For Frank, that was a karma dosage. Driving over northern Maryland on the 3rd day of my trip, I eventually arrived at New Jersey. Well, not exactly with much enthusiasm. I entered New Jersey but stopped just before I arrived in Connecticut. Once in Connecticut, I spent several hours investigating some coastal historic towns. Though I had no particular objective, the architecture was so different from what I was accustomed to in North Carolina that I felt a strong sensation of being in a new place, both physically and emotionally. And avoided telling the authorities, but I spent an hour in Groton looking for as many submarines as I could. Those blackfish are quite stealthful. Looking along the coast, I was reminded that those nuclear submarines cut a hole in the hull to refuel the reactor and subsequently weld the hull back together. Was that another way to describe my circumstances? Could the first step in rejuvenating my life be Karen's treachery, which ripped a hole in my heart? Once I started down a new path, could I heal myself? The next day when I got up, I knew it would be the toughest day thus far. Following a filling breakfast of eggs, bacon, bread and a robust cup of black coffee, I prepared myself for a challenging chat with my eldest daughter, Claire, at Brown. The drive there took little time, and I was at her dorm about late morning. We agreed to postpone our talk a little so she could act happy for an hour or two. She showed me around the university, then brought me to the cafeteria, where she met her friends. These were exactly the kind of young men and women I had hoped she would surround herself with, friendly, attentive, and apparently supportive. I pulled Claire's roommate aside on our way out and told her Claire had a difficult day. She was supposed to watch my daughter. "Of sure, Mr. Baker," she said. "She shared it with us last night. Here among us are all her supporters." Yes, my daughter had made sensible friend choices. Claire and I stayed in her dorm room talking for hours. I showed her pictures and played audio recordings I never would have imagined to expose to one of my kids. Her feelings swung from grief to rage. "Mom would do that is beyond unbelievable. Is she the same person who raised us at all? She has become what kind of nasty person?" Though I could relate to her, at that moment I had to step in. "Claire is your mother whatever she does. And keep in mind that I, not you, she has betrayed." "Sorry, Dad, but she broke my soul family. I am definitely affected by this." I couldn't contradict that. We kept talking all afternoon, and I showed her my ideas. I urged her to get her friends together, and we had dinner at the greatest restaurant in town, or at least the one within my means. Everyone seems to have delighted in a departure from the standard dining hall cuisine. I related tales of my own college eating experiences, and I believe it helped them to see their own circumstances in a fresh light. That night I remained at a nearby hotel. The next morning I had breakfast with Claire, hugged her tearfully, and then traveled north to repeat the procedure. Claire has to have told Denise, as her response was far more under control than that of her older sister. Though less astonished, there remained dissatisfaction and resentment. She asked to view the supporting materials. I showed her. Her mother called coincidentally as we were chatting, and I sent her the universal sign for, "No, I'm not here." I shook my head, waved wildly, and copied a throat-cutting action. She knew, Denise was always the family's more level-headed member. She then accomplished something I had never seen before. She said, "Dad phoned yesterday night. Did he not? Is it true you have evolved into a lady who lies about cheating on her husband and engages in multiple partner involvement?" I stunned myself. Though at the same time I couldn't dispute the truth in her remarks, I wanted to chastise her for talking to her mother like that. "You heard Mom? You stayed 6 weeks helping someone else while Dad was alone at home. Mom, was it well worth it? Was it worth going without your spouse?" Really, my daughter uses words rather brilliantly. Note to self, stay off her negative side. Not much more ground to cover. Denise told me that although her mother was primarily in tears and trying to provide apologies, my daughter was not buying any of it. Not far from the university, I later brought Denise and her companions to a Thai restaurant named the Elephant Walk. Like her sister, Denise had selected her friends deliberately, and dinner was a nice gathering. One of her friends stated, "Mr. Baker, Denise told us about what you're going through on our way back to campus. Last night, she was rather agitated. We helped her. Perhaps you could come back here and we will treat you to the cafeteria." That made the group giggle. I mean, really, maybe we can find a better place than that. This set off more chuckles, and we laughed all the way back to her dorm. After finding a place to rest for the evening, I had breakfast with my daughter in the morning, and on the 7th day of my trip I kept on going northward. I left Boston and arrived barely 2 hours south of Portland. My priorities now were my girls rather than my soon-to-be ex-wife. I couldn't be prouder of them. They were becoming strong, moral young women. I came to see they would negotiate the approaching divorce more skillfully than I had imagined. Leaving these two incredible jewels behind with no idea of when I will see them again presented a struggle on this day. As it happens, my concerns were unfounded. Not ready to face the realities of beginning my new life just yet, so when I arrived at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, I turned west and headed for the Presidential Range and the White Mountains. I arrived in the White Mountains and ascended Mount Washington via the Cog Railway. Feeling the chilly Arctic winds that seemed out of place in the early days of August, I finally sensed a rebirth inside myself as I stood there gazing across the breadth to the lesser peaks of the White Mountains and surveyed the lush pine trees below. Though alone, at least I was tall. I had changed, shedding the obligations and regrets of my previous existence. I was then ready to welcome the fresh chapter and all its possibilities. Standing on higher ground, I was ready to start a different trip. Everything I could have wanted was ahead. I placed a real maple syrup-topped pancake order the next morning. Right now I was in maple syrup country. Years to come would find me in the same surroundings. Restless and ready, I got back into my car and headed for Portland. Arriving in the middle of the afternoon, I chose to follow up with my new manager to let them know I'd arrived. About half of the office personnel knew me already, so I was greeted warmly. It was comforting. Those were the first happy, straightforward faces I had seen in a week. Henry, my new manager, got the staff assembled for introductions. I took a brief tour of the company, but not before everyone decided where we would all eat dinner. I thought it would be a downtown restaurant, but to my astonishment we found ourselves grilling steaks in Henry's place with all the accompaniments. Though I should have savored lobster in Maine, there was no hurry for it. This was more about getting back into society and savoring some really delicious steaks and quite exceptional local beer. They asked about my story. What was a guy from the South doing uprooting his life and moving to Maine at this point? I thereafter told my story. I left off the graphic elements but gave enough for them to grasp. I might get a bit short-tempered in the next few weeks, I said at closing. Though I have a lot to process, it is not my usual attitude. If I act out, perhaps you would call me out and advise me to chill off. Now and then I could use some mild pushback. Every man put his arm around my shoulder. Every woman present unexpectedly gave me a peck on the cheek. All they said, "AB," was, "We're here for you." All they needed to say. Later that evening, I turned on my cell phone once more after getting inside my hotel room. One of each of my daughters had sent encouraging notes. I had gotten perhaps 8 or 10 extra texts from the young men and women who loved the dinner and wanted me to know they would be there for my girls, so they must have shared my number with their friends. Those young people are really amazing. Many friends kept reaching out, so I decided to get in touch with all of them and explain the circumstances so they can stop worrying. I kept my whereabouts secret, that would come later. I just explained why I had left. Though at first they were reluctant to believe it, I sent them the same 3 pictures I had sent Karen and told them I had even more damning evidence should they require more proof. I considered it, but really I couldn't think of one way to keep her from making her own decisions. Let the truth out in due course. I had tried and it had not worked. Every one of them sent me loving notes and encouragement. I told them I would keep in touch. My ideas of becoming a ghost were clearly wishful thinking. Too many people cared about me, and that is undoubtedly a good thing. I listened to the missed calls while reading over Karen's last text messages. She came clean eventually and admitted, although her confession was laced with odd outbursts of wrath. She found me one way or another responsible for her behavior and for all that had happened. That is simply ludicrous. I texted her saying I would call her about noon the next day. It has to happen sooner or later. Let's say the talk was not at all fulfilling. She moved from denial to remorse to blame. She apologized. Over her, Frank had great influence. Her suffocating me was a result. I worked too much, hence I was at fault. She even dared to assert that between them, they were merely playing about. Nothing major happened. When she tried to persuade me she was merely looking for her creative inspiration, I almost started laughing. She even accused me of turning our girls against her, as if her own behavior hadn't achieved that without my help. When she finally stopped talking, I laid it out for her quite simply. She had plotted with Frank to turn on me, fought my attempts to mend our relationship, carried out the betrayal, and now she was dealing with fallout. The whys lost importance to me now. She was still begging her case and sobbing when I hung up. I was finished with her. Not turning back, I knew too much. Conveniently near the office, I found a basic but pleasant 2-bedroom apartment in an older building. Originally considering it as a temporary situation, I believed I could utilize the walking exercise but soon changed my viewpoint. Living simply in town, avoiding the added chores that come with owning a house, and having a little coastal cottage for weekends sounded like a wonderful idea. Then I considered why I should stop at a cottage. My seaside escape may be a yacht I purchase, kept parked in the harbor. Early October arrived by the time I worked through all of this. Though I had intended to live alone, it has not turned out that way. Actually, I spend more time with my daughters right now than I did in Raleigh. Every month they arrange a weekend trip, usually accompanied by friends. My apartment is alive during those 36 hours, and I generally treat them to dinner. Though I miss them right away, I do yearn for the silence once they are gone. A handful of my friends have visited and the others intend to visit when the weather is better. Surprisingly, though I live alone, I am not lonely. Along with all my travels, I have acquired new pals at work. The sailing community is vibrant and welcoming. I have met interesting women. I will, however, keep polite and well-mannered until the divorce is official. Karen still gets in touch with me even if the divorce will be formal soon. She would rather minimize the circumstances and never really stones. She says simply, everyone does it, it has no significance at all. It does though. The intimacy has weight, hence the dishonesty and manipulation are much more important. Though people evolve and I no longer see the use in conveying this to her. To be honest, my life is not quite apart from hers. Complete dissociation is not likely given 2 daughters and numerous mutual connections. Still, I no longer live with the everyday suffering of rejection and betrayal 600 miles separating us. Up until I was no longer living in hers, she was the focal point of my life. I am now building my own future and walking my own road. A number of favorable results came from the circumstance. To start with, I actually adore living up here. Though it's a bit of a shock, I'm experiencing my first Maine winter. If others can do it, so can I. Early darkness in this area actually makes indoor events seem cozier and more brilliant. I'm excited about spring when I can work on splicing lines and applying varnish because I started looking for a boat and came upon a spot with moorings not too far from town. The people are real, the microbreweries are excellent, and the neighborhood restaurants are decent. There is a range of music, dances to learn, like contra dancing, and I am still finding surprises. After all, I think life will go out for me. Is my heart at last healed? Not yet, but I have hope for the better life that is ahead since time has a way of curing hurts. Oh, and as a side note, Frank's wife appears to be as traditional as I am. She divorced him and kicked him out the house. Even worse is what is involved here. Frank and Karen are still unpublished. My mother's fiancé stole my $7,000 college savings, and my family used my dad's inheritance without telling me. My grandparents on my mother's side are making me a lot of hate after my mother and her fiancé were detained. I had good cause to call the cops on them, hence this happened. My mother and I never got along, particularly given that my dad died 10 years ago. Right now I'm 17. In a few months I should be beginning college. I realized I would have to work for myself and create my own plans since, sadly, I knew my mother would never have any money saved away for me. I started working at 14 years old. After school, I would work part-time. For 4 years, I had been saving to have at least some money left aside. I would also save it as I usually get cash from my relatives on my birthdays as presents and occasionally on holidays. I was really glad to have almost $7,000 saved thus far. Of course, it was all in cash, and I kept it carefully stashed in a small wooden box my father had fashioned for me in a little nook of my cupboard. My mother never let me open a bank account, hence that was out of the question as I never had one. I never told my mother or anybody else about the money, hence I'm not sure how anyone came upon it. Still, a few days ago I discovered the box was absolutely empty. When I approached my mother about it, she informed me her fiancé had taken the money to put toward his new property. Finding out what had transpired sent me totally insane. My mom and her fiancé were on one side of the great argument raging in the home while I was on another. Ultimately though, I am just 17 and they are in power right now, so I had to compromise. This was my life, hence the only thing I could do was walk up to my room, shut myself in, and spend hours crying as I would have to start over yet once more. Before college, I wasn't even sure if I could save enough money for anything. I felt so demoralized and totally lost. That day I formed my mental picture. Since it cannot go unpacked, I was planning to exact revenge on them. Though it was a really large choice, fortunately I was able to extract revenge exactly 3 days later. They have now been arrested and are paying for the crime they did. My sole issue with this whole situation is that my always on my side grandparents are now against me and it just doesn't make sense anymore. For the past 2 years, my mother's fiancé, I'll call him Rob, has been in my life. I have despised every single second of it since he is simply among the most horrible persons I have ever known. I would even consider him to be abusive. Clearly vocally and emotionally rather than physically. Usually my mother takes the most of it, but sometimes he loses his patience with me too and says anything that comes to mind. He curses me out, tries his very best to make me cry like my mother, and becomes even more enraged when he discovers I don't care. This causes him to lose even more control of his tongue and what he says. My mother never bothers to defend me. After my dad went away, my mother did not date anyone for the first couple of years. Then she met Rob later. He was polite and reasonable for the first few months, but he began displaying his actual colors after their first major argument. 6 months into their marriage, he had moved in with us and begun controlling my mother. He could hardly hang on any work and was a deadbeat, no-good imbecile. Contextually, he is in his mid to late 30s and still depends on his parents for money sometimes since he has utterly poor financial sense and wastes more money than he makes. He borrows money from his parents when he is battling with my mother. When he's not, he's comfortable enough leeching off her. The unfortunate thing is that my mother is not quite rich. She brings home a reasonable amount but not enough to maintain Rob's ostentatious lifestyle. She is a floor supervisor at our neighborhood grocery. Still, I never let it start to trouble me. I always aim to be as self-sufficient as I can. From the age of 14, I have refrained from asking my mother anything except for basics. Not even would I ask her to pay for those once I started working part-time. I really rely on her for shelter and food. I never ask her to buy me anything. That's all. I know that even expecting that is somewhat stupid, thus I do not expect her to do anything more for me. From the start, she has made it rather evident that she despises me. She never really treated me well even as a little child, and I always felt as though she didn't even want me. That impression developed into a belief as I grew older. At least earlier, I had my dad to have my back and stand up to my mother anytime she would get too mad at me. But I was on my own once he went away, and that is how it has been for the last few years. Things grew worse when Rob arrived, but I always comforted myself by reminding myself that shortly I would be off to college and wouldn't have to worry about any of this. That feels dark and improbable right now. I stayed in my room and did nothing for the 3 days my money was taken away because I was so depressed. We moved into our new house the day I found out all my money had been seized. I did all the required work, but I avoided talking to either of the two persons living with me. They seemed no worse for it either. My mother instructed me to get ready for the evening housewarming party on the 3rd day. Having had my money snatched from me, I started yelling at her and told her I wouldn't be doing anything of the such. Their sole means of purchasing this mansion had been the money they pilfered from me. That particularly infuriated my mother. Referring to the fact she had raised me, she advised me to be glad for them now that we were finally living in our own house and not a rented property and should just suck it up and let things go since I owe them for life anyhow. Which is not even logical since she was legally obligated to do it and it is not like she gave me any great favor. Regarding the house, It was very large for the three of us anyway. I knew they had purchased this house specifically to wow everyone with their elegant address and large residence. That day I was quite agitated and chose to phone the parents of my father. Something I had never done before. It was complicated as my paternal grandparents had cut off contact with our family when my dad died. I suppose it hurt too much for them to keep in touch. They cut ties and we stopped having speaking terms. I'm not sure why, but I still had their numbers, so as a last resort I chose to phone them since my mother's grandparents, with whom I had a stronger relationship, were really somewhat neutral in this regard. I told my mother's parents about the day my money was taken, expecting they would speak with her and assist in resolving things for me. On the plus side, we would at last have a place of our own and wouldn't have to worry about rent. They just stated they were delighted my mother could purchase a new house. They advised me to hunt the silver lining. Their response seemed strange to me since, up to now, they had always understood me. Though they would silently support me, they never challenged my mother. This time was different and I couldn't make sense of it. I avoided them once more since I was also furious with them. That same day, when my mother advised me to swallow it, I made contact with my paternal grandparents in search of a different answer, one that may provide some future hope. It was only a gut feeling. Luckily they answered the call, and I told them everything right away. I said I knew they were hurt and didn't want to keep in touch, but because this was an emergency and I thought my dad would have wanted them to help me should he still be alive. I told them my mother had grabbed all of my savings, which I had been saving for over a few years to cover college. I suddenly had no idea whether that was even possible anymore. After listening to me, my grandfather started something that baffled me. He informed me that evidently my dad left a college fund for me, so he didn't know why I had to save money separately. That news surprised me as my mother had never mentioned a college fund and I never asked her since I figured she hadn't saved any money for me. Knowing his death was very certain, I had totally forgotten what my dad might have done for me before he died. He passed really young, hence I assumed he might not have had time to arrange for me. I was astounded when my grandparents told me this. Furious and annoyed as well, I asked them whether they had any documentation or evidence I might use against my mother. They promised to hunt for something and call me later. I stayed in my room attempting to fit everything together for several hours. I came to see that Rob and my mother had clearly teamed together and pilfers my college money to purchase this mansion. From what I knew, my mother did not make enough money to buy the house. Regarding Rob, he had not worked anywhere for the past 3 months, thus I strongly questioned whether he could afford a residence of this kind. I would then report them to the police. I simply needed something to validate this. My grandparents finally contacted me after waiting for a few hours and supplied pictures of some documents my mother had actually signed saying she would use the money my father left her to pay for my college tuition and guarantee I had a comfortable life. She had done everything but guarantee that my life was comfortable, so I literally laughed out loud when I read it. She indeed went out of her way to make my life more unpleasant. Still, Mother had signed those papers, and it infuriated me that my grandparents had never mentioned it until after my dad died. They had simply left me behind, and my mother had not really been there for me. Though I believe it was all a show, my mother and grandparents tried to be there for me. My dad's parents were too consumed in their own loss to give me any thought. My grandparents gave a somewhat poor response when I inquired why they had never shown me these papers prior. At the time, I was too young anyhow. They told me they had sort of forgotten about it when my dad died. And once I grew older, we were not on speaking terms anymore, and it had escaped their thoughts since they too were getting older. I just let it go since I couldn't dispute that. Once I received the evidence, I phoned a friend whose dad was on the force and explained I needed his assistance. So in the evening, just as the housewarming party was getting underway, my friend's father arrived with another cop and a lawyer to arrest my mom and her fiancé. Their commitment had been obviously breached, and the problem was not only that promise breaking. My mother had essentially opened herself to a lawsuit by straying from what she had promised, therefore breaching the terms of the agreement she had signed all those years ago. My mother and Rob were finally arrested while I was showing the party attendees everything. That felt, in my life, the most vindicated I had ever experienced. Like several of their ex-co-workers and friends, almost everyone they had planned to wow was appalled as they watched them being revealed and hauled away under handcuffs. They continued to glare at me as if I had done something wrong, too proud and arrogant even then. When their daughter was being brought away in handcuffs, my mother's grandparents were also at the party and became quite irate and avoided talking to me following the event. I was by myself in the house once everyone had departed and had no idea what to do. Though they had been arrested, they would most likely be released on bail in a few hours, hence I was devastated. Furthermore, it would take months to prove everything even if I intended to charge them. Even then, Should they be able to turn things around for themselves, they had a great possibility of being let off the hook. I wouldn't get back the money meant for me till then. There was just no knowing what would happen. I would still be losing out no matter what. The names on the deed were Rob's and Mom's, not mine, hence I cannot precisely sell the house either. I would have to battle the matter with a lawyer even if I wanted to formally compel her to sell the house and pay me the money. Now, since my friend and his father kindly offered to help to organize everything, I was free from concern about the expense of that. They reassured me I should not worry about it as they know what I'm going through and live close by. Now though, I'm not sure what to do. Worse, the few people I had on my side are no longer in contact with me. Because they think I have been unappreciative, my mother's grandparents expressed no desire in talking with me. They stated they knew I didn't get along with my mother, but sending her to jail for something like this didn't sit right with them given all she had done for me. Their lack of desire for any interaction with me truly set me off. I feel totally alone right now. Although right now I may have defeated Rob and my mother, over time I feel like I have lost far more. I simply feel very powerless right now and am not sure what to do. Am I the asshole for having my mother and her fiancé jailed for pilfering my cash to cover their new property purchase? Update 1. Hi there, out of the house Rob and my mother bought. I have moved. I reported them to the police 1 week ago, hence this is why. They were let go after 48 hours of custody and returned home. I opted to depart right away upon learning they would be returning as I wanted no confrontation. I stepped out when they came in as I had already packed my belongings. Though I didn't want to interact with them, they urged me to stop and chat. I left just as fast as I could. Having previously phoned a taxi, I got in and proceeded straight to my friend's house, where I have spent the past 3 days. For record's sake, this is the same friend whose dad assisted with the lawyer and arrest. Now the lawyer, the father of my friend and I are collaborating daily to find out how to finish things up as fast as feasible. I am somewhat desperate at this moment, thus I am ready to get to a compromise. In a few days we have scheduled a meeting for their attorney, them, and a court-appointed mediator. The negotiations will show how things go. Should they reject my terms, we will have to bring this before court, which could take some time. Though I want it to be fair, I am trying my best to reach a resolution. I want the money I need to complete my schooling. For now, my friend's father has informed me I should expect financial aid from them. But, I am reluctant to take financial support from anyone else since it seems odd. Regarding my grandparents, none has contacted me yet. Clearly, my father's parents and my mother's grandparents stopped talking to me straight after they emailed me pictures of the paperwork. Apart from that, we haven't interacted thus far. I have gathered those records from them personally to provide some concrete evidence as well. They were fairly indifferent about the whole situation even when I walked over to pick those records from them. Though they wished me the best, they did not offer to assist me or even extend an invitation for me to perhaps visit or perhaps interview. Since their behavior has been truly unusual for me to cope with, I really have no idea what's going on with them. So far, things have been somewhat disappointing. Nevertheless, I only hope I can overcome this fast so I may begin college. To be honest, right now I am only going by that. Of course, my friends are being rather helpful, which I truly appreciate because right now I have no family to talk of. Only these folks are really concerned about me. Update 2. Hi. Thus right now I'm not sure what to say as there has been an exciting development. What I discovered is terrible, hence I am literally shivering with rage. Once more, this is somewhat dubious, but my mother showed screenshots, thus I'm not sure what to believe. What happened was that today, just a few hours ago, my mother emailed me. There were just 2 days left until our mediation appointment. She said she really ought to talk to me. She couldn't get to me since I had blocked her everywhere else, but she opened a new email account and sent me something that truly screwed everything I knew to be true. I will hence not waste time. I will just get right to the point. Against me, my whole family plotted. Indeed, the reason all of my grandparents have been so strange throughout the process is that they have all been in on from the start. Not only had my mother squandered the money left to me by my father for herself, but all of them had taken their fair share and kept their lips closed in return. Because she had dirt on them, I at last know why my maternal grandparents were offended that I had reported my mother to the police and why they always seemed to be worried for me but never really stood up for me when it came to her. I also now understand why my paternal grandparents had never even bothered to notify me that these signed papers my mother had left existed until I asked them. My mother emailed me evidence of each of their having been in on this. She spoke with them when I was maybe 14 or 15 years old. She fortunately had all of this on file since they were stupid enough to have these email exchanges. She forwarded me screenshots of these emails. Since I got her arrested, My mother advised me it was only right that I bring these individuals into the matter as well, since it wouldn't be fair for her to be punished when they had all collaborated against me to hide the money and use it for themselves. My dad left a lot of money for me, and all these people, including his attorney, thought it would be better for them to keep it from me and spend it for themselves. This is still unbelievable to me. Over and over I've been reading that email, trying to make sense of it since it seems ridiculous that all these people, including my dad's own parents, were against me. It's really rather shockingly amazing. Their conscience had finally checked in and they had a change of heart, therefore the sole reason they had notified me about the papers my mother had signed and given me the evidence recently. When I phoned them to get aid, they chose to tell me the truth since they understood what they were doing was wrong. Although my mother and her parents had persuaded them not to tell me the truth as it would also bring them down, they had been intending to do this way earlier. Although they had assured me they would not come to tell me everything, if I ever asked they would most certainly be honest. All of this came to light when I inquired whether there was anything they could do to assist. They chose to offer me those records as evidence. Though it makes me happy they decided to assist me back then, it does not clear them. It also clarifies their strange and distant behavior even after helping me out, because they were guilty. They are truly ashamed, which they should be, yet they still cannot own what they did. Right now though, my brain is simply not working as it should. I just know how to handle any of this. I have no idea what to believe in. Since it's so vast and practically driving me crazy, I haven't even told my friend about what I discovered. All at once I feel deceived, hurt and enraged. Right now I have no idea what to do with these feelings. Given this is a significant development and we will most certainly bring this up during the discussions, I clearly have to discuss this with my attorney. Forgetting that she would also be losing out on a lot of things because of this process, my mother tried to flip the tide against the ones who exposed her. She told me all of this. And I'm happy she did, as I believe I should have known that other than a small number of people, nobody has my back on this planet. I guess this is how it is since I cannot rely on anyone. Right now, the only thing left to do is inform my friend so he may notify his father. Then we can all get down with my lawyer and discuss what to do about this and forward direction. Still, I am most sure I will be attending college this year. I am not wavering. I have made my mind. I'm ready to ask the dad of a friend for assistance. Right now, I guess I will ask him to be a co-signer on my loan application. I am not asking him to pay my college tuition right now. Update 3. Hi, so we met with the mediator today and, as I mentioned, I very definitely mentioned what my mother had told me in the email. She basically came clean about everything she had done, and now she will have to pay for the money she and the rest of my family have pilfers from me. She also claimed though, that some of the money went toward my upbringing, so we shouldn't hold it against her and shouldn't expect her to reimburse any of the sum taken. I do not buy it though. My grandparents have to do as well. They stole not only that money, but also my hopes and aspirations. I want them to give it back to me so I may have a dignified life. I am not going to be reliant anymore. My friend's dad and my attorney told me that although these kinds of things are not unusual, they do not diminish the cunning and repulsive nature of it. Like me, they were enraged and properly so. They promised me they would make sure I wouldn't have to rely on anybody else for money my entire life. After my dad died, the type of money they pilfers would have made me comfortable for every single year of my life. Although he had done all the necessary steps to ensure I led a contented life, my family found it unacceptable. They just were selfish, hence they had to be taken away from me. Not that will fly with me anymore. After our conversation, my attorney and I agreed we were going for the throat. Particularly on my dime, there is no need for us to back off and let them have themselves. Though things were somewhat harsh there, one thing is certain. We will be meeting once more, and this time my grandparents, all of them, will be present as obviously they have also been involved in this. Things might go to court, but I'm going to deal with a student loan till then. I will ensure I get my justice. More than justice, I have to retrieve from them money taken from me. Since the money was meant for me just and nobody else, all of them had to reimburse me. Although my mother agreed differently, they also betrayed their pledge to my father, to keep me safe and content. I never want to see them once more since they are all failures. I gifted my stepdaughter a house, but she uninvited me from her wedding. Now I'm taking back everything I gave. I, 62M, am dealing with a challenging situation with my stepdaughter. I have been married to her mother, Sarah, for 15 years. My first wife, Emily, died of cancer when I was 45. Emily and I were high school sweethearts who married for 25 beautiful years. We never had children because of Emily's health problems. After Emily died, I was devastated and devoted myself to my career as a real estate developer. 3 years later, Sarah and I met at a charity event. She was energetic, friendly, and had a 10-year-old daughter named Lily. We hit it off right away and I felt pulled to both of them. Sarah had been suffering as a single mom. Tom, Lily's biological father, left her when she was 2 years old. He'd come and go in their lives, but he never offered genuine support. I saw an opportunity to rediscover love and be the father figure Lily needed. Lily and I developed a close relationship over time. I assisted her with her homework, went to her school functions, and was present for every milestone. I paid for her college education so she may have every option in life. Lily is now 25, and she is engaged to a nice young man named Mike. To show my support and affection, I decided to give them a house as a pre-wedding gift. It's a lovely home in a pleasant area, ideal for beginning their new life. However, when the wedding invitations arrived, I was astonished and extremely disappointed to learn that I was not invited. At first I assumed it was a mistake. Surely, after all these years, Lily would not remove me from her special day. I am at a loss. I've always treated Lily like my own daughter, and I assumed she saw me as a parent. Now I'm wondering if I should take back the house I gave them. It's not about the money. I'm lucky that finances aren't an issue. It is the underlying principle. I feel misled and underappreciated. Am I overreacting? Should I confront Lily about this, or simply accept her decision and move on, even if it means returning my gift? I recall when I first met Lily. She was timid and apprehensive, hiding between Sarah's legs. But she eventually opened up to me. I remember teaching her how to ride a bike and seeing the satisfaction in her eyes when she eventually balanced without training wheels. I was there on her first day of high school, reassuring her when she was concerned about fitting in. When she suffered her first heartbreak at 16, I was the one who sat with her, offering ice cream and a listening ear. We had our own traditions too. Every Sunday, we had a family game night. Lily insisted on playing the banker in Monopoly, and we would giggle at how serious she took her position. On her 18th birthday I surprised her with a car, not fancy, but dependable. The sight of utter excitement on her face when I handed her the keys is something I'll always remember. When Lily was accepted to college, we celebrated as a family. I recall her hugging me firmly and whispering "Thank you, Dad" into my ear. It was the first time she'd called me Dad, and it meant everything to me. All of these recollections make the current situation even more agonizing. How could she forget what we'd been through together? The thought of not being there on her wedding day, not leading her down the aisle, not having that father-daughter dance is painful. I have always thought that family is more than just blood. It's about love, support, and sticking with each other through thick and thin. I assumed Lily felt the same way. Now I'm doubting everything. Part of me wants to face her immediately and demand an explanation. But another part of me is scared of what I may hear. What if she claims she never truly saw me as a father? What if this is her way of letting me know I'm not family? I chatted to Sarah about it, but she appears hesitant to get engaged. She thinks I should talk to Lily directly, but how can I when she doesn't even answer my phone? The house I gave them was meant to represent my love and support for their new life together. Now it serves as a sad reminder of my exclusion from that existence. Taking it back feels petty, yet leaving it implies that I accept her decision to cut me off. I never imagined I would be in this position. When I married Sarah and became a part of Lily's life, I made a full commitment to becoming a father figure. For 15 years, I have loved her as if she were my own. It's crushing to watch something so readily discarded. Is it wrong for me to decide to take back the house? Is it inappropriate to seek recognition for the part I've played in her life? Should I just let her have her wedding, even if it means I won't be there? I'm torn and could need some outside perspective. Update 1. It has been a week since my last post, and I would like to provide an update on the situation. Thank you for your guidance and support. It's been a difficult period, and your feedback has been invaluable. After much thought, I decided to address Lily about her choice to exclude me from the wedding. However, this turned out to be more challenging than I expected. Lily appeared to be avoiding me. She did not return my calls or react to my texts. It was as if she had unexpectedly become a stranger. Frustrated and hurt, I looked to my wife Sarah for answers. What she said left me stunned. Apparently, Lily wishes to invite her biological father, Tom, to the wedding. The same man who abandoned her and Sarah when she was a kid. Sarah revealed that Lily had been in contact with Tom for approximately a year. He unexpectedly reappeared in her life, claiming to have changed and wanted to make amends. According to Sarah, Tom indicated a wish to be a part of Lily's life again and to lead her down the aisle on her wedding day. I was stunned. For years, Tom had been nothing but a disappointment for Lily. I remember the nights I spent comforting her after he broke yet another promise to visit. I was present for her first heartbreak, her high school graduation, and her college acceptance, all of the events Tom decided to miss. Tom's record as a father is far from impressive. He never paid child support, rarely showed up on birthdays or holidays, and appeared to be more concerned with his own life than with being a parent. I can't help but wonder what's behind his abrupt change of heart. The discovery that Lily had been in covert communication with Tom for a year stung almost as much as being denied entry to the wedding. I assumed Lily and I had a tight relationship, one in which she could come to me with anything. Finding out she had been keeping this from me for so long seemed like a betrayal. I'm attempting to grasp Lily's point of view. I understand how great the need to have a relationship with one's biological parent might be, but after everything we've gone through together, and all the love and support I've given her, how can she just abandon me? I recall one particular instance when Lily was 14. Tom agreed to take her to a father-daughter dance at her school. Lily was so excited that she spent weeks looking for the ideal dress. Tom did not show up for the dance, and there was no call or explanation. I found Lily crying in her room, still dressed. Without hesitation, I dressed on a suit and we headed to the dance together. We had a great time, and Lily appeared to forget about Tom's absence. That night, when I tucked her into bed, she hugged me and exclaimed, "You're the best dad ever." How could she forget things like this? There was also a moment when Lily required braces. Tom had pledged to pay for them, but when the time arrived, he could not be found. I stepped in without hesitation to ensure Lily received the necessary dental care. For 2 years, I drove her to every orthodontist visit, bought her ice cream after particularly difficult adjustments, and celebrated with her when the braces were finally removed. These recollections exacerbate the misery of the current circumstance. How can Lily pick Tom over me after all we've been through? I've been present for every significant event in her life, whereas Tom has been nothing but a series of unfulfilled promises. I have concluded that I need to speak with Lily personally. I cannot let this situation continue without confronting it head-on. I've sent her a message asking to meet, emphasizing that if she doesn't accept, I'll have to make some difficult decisions about my involvement in her life and the wedding gift. I'm hoping she agrees to meet. I need to comprehend her reasons and communicate how much her actions have wounded me. Am I wrong to seek this confrontation? Should I just let her have her wedding, even if it means I won't be there? As I await Lily's reaction, I find myself reflecting on our connection. I remember spending hours in parking lots teaching her how to drive my old sedan. I remember the nights we spent working on her college applications, and the pleasure I had when she was accepted to her ideal institution. I remember the day she moved into her dorm, hugging me farewell with tears in her eyes and murmuring, "I'm going to miss you, Dad." These recollections make her current acts even more perplexing. How can she so quickly abandon years of love and support? Is the pull of biology truly so powerful, or have I unintentionally failed her as a father figure? I'm also dealing with my feelings for Tom. Part of me is irritated with Dad for swooping in now, after years of absence, and upsetting our family dynamic. Another part of me is anxious about Lily. What happens if he disappoints her again? Will I have to pick up the pieces once more? As I prepare to confront Lily, I'm filled with mixed emotions. I'm hurt, furious, and bewildered, but deep down, I still love her. I want the best for her, but I also need to safeguard my emotions. I'll update after speaking with Lily. Thank you for your ongoing support during this tough time. Update 2. Hello everyone. I'm here with another update on the situation with Lily, my stepdaughter. A lot has transpired since my last post, and I'm still absorbing it. Lily finally consented to meet with me following my ultimatum. We met in a neighborhood coffee shop, which provided a neutral setting for what I expected to be a difficult conversation. As soon as we sat down, I could sense shame in her eyes, but also a stubbornness I'd never seen before. I began by stating how saddened I was by her decision to exclude me from the wedding. I reminded her of the years we'd spent together, and how I'd been there for her when Tom wasn't. I informed her, "Lily, I have been there for you since you were 10 years old. I assisted you with your homework, taught you how to drive, and supported you throughout college. I have treated you like my own daughter. How can you push me aside now?" Lily's remark shocked me. She said, "I know you've done a lot for me, and I appreciate it, but Tom is my true father. He wants to make things right and I want to give him the opportunity." I couldn't believe what I heard. I questioned her. What about all the times he failed you? What about all those birthdays he missed? What about the child support that he never paid? Does none of this matter? She responded, "People may change. He is different today. He wants to be a part of my life." I could feel my anger mounting. I told her that it was I who had sponsored her education and been present at all of her life's major moments. And now that she was capable and established in her life, she wanted to ask the man who had abandoned her to lead her down the aisle. Lily then dropped another shocker. She explained, "Tom has agreed to contribute to the wedding expenditures. He wants to take responsibility." That was the final straw for me. I told her, "Fine, if Tom wants to be your father now, let him accept all of the obligations that come with it. I will not be paying for anything related to this wedding, and the house I gifted you should also be considered off the table." Lily's face fell. I could tell she had not expected this reaction. She attempted to backtrack, claiming she still wanted me in her life, just not at the wedding. But for me, the damage had already been done. I stepped up to depart, but first I told her, "Lily, I have always considered you my daughter. I believed you felt the same way about me as your father. I suppose I was incorrect. I hope Tom meets your expectations this time." With that, I departed the coffee shop. The drive home was a haze. When I returned home, I informed Sarah what had transpired. She was unhappy, but she acknowledged Lily's wish to have her biological father in her life. She did, however, agree that Lily's actions were both painful and unfair. I've subsequently called my lawyer to begin the process of reclaiming the house. It is not about the money, but about the principle. I can't in good conscience give such a valuable thing to someone who doesn't consider me family. As I ponder on our talk, I realize how much Lily has changed. The stubborn young woman in the coffee shop appeared so unlike the tiny child who would run to me for comfort after a nightmare, or the adolescent who proudly showed me her first A+ on a difficult math test. I recall the day Lily graduated from high school. As she came across the stage to receive her graduation, she smiled broadly and gave me a thumbs up. Later, at her graduation party, she hugged me firmly and said, "I couldn't have done this without you, Dad." Where is Lily now? I can't help but think about how many times Tom has let Lily down in the past. He had offered to take her camping for her 13th birthday, but then canceled at the last minute. I ended up bringing her instead, showing her how to pitch a tent and cook marshmallows over a campfire. Or the time he promised to help her move into her college dorm but didn't show up. I was there, hauling boxes and helping her paint her new room. Now Tom swoops in with promises of transformation and financial assistance, and he's suddenly the father she wants by her side. It feels like a slap in the face after years of supporting her through thick and thin. Part of me worries if I'm being overly harsh. Should I be more accepting of Lily's wish to establish a relationship with her biological father? But then I remember the pain in Sarah's eyes when Tom abandoned them years ago, and how hard we've fought to create a loving family. Lily seemed to be throwing everything out on a whim. I understand that some people may think I'm being petty or overreacting by taking back the house and withholding financial support for the wedding, but from my standpoint, Lily has made her decision. Despite our shared history, she chose Tom over me. It hurts, but I must protect myself emotionally and financially. Should I have been more accepting of Lily's desire to reconcile with her biological father? I'm still conflicted, but I believe I need to stand my stance. I will provide an update if there are any notable developments. Thank you for your support and wisdom during this tough time. Update 3. Hello everyone, it's been 6 months since my last update, and I'd like to discuss what has transpired since then. A lot has changed, and I'm still coming to terms with it. Following the altercation with Lily, I followed through on my plan to take back the house and withdraw my financial assistance for the wedding. It was a hard time. Sarah was caught between supporting her daughter and recognizing my pain. Our relationship deteriorated and Sarah eventually decided to leave temporarily to be with Lily during the wedding preparations. The wedding proceeded as scheduled, with Tom leading Lily down the aisle. I wasn't there, of course, but I heard about it through common friends. They described the ceremony as beautiful, but there was a palpable sense of anxiety. For a long, I didn't hear from Lily or Sarah. I immersed myself into my work, hoping to distract myself from the grief of losing my family. I will not lie, it was a lonely and tough period. Then about a week ago Sarah called me. Her voice was shaky and I knew she had been sobbing. She admitted, "We made a tremendous error. We're very sorry." Sarah went on to relate what transpired following the wedding. Tom had stayed for almost a month, playing the doting father. He did provide some money to the wedding expenditures, as promised, but as the bills piled up and the reality of continued financial responsibility dawned on him, Tom began to remove himself. Tom vanished within 2 months after the wedding, like he had done years before. He stopped answering phones, avoided Lily and Sarah, and effectively disappeared from their lives once more. Lily was devastated. She honestly believed Tom had changed and wanted to be a part of her life. The realization that he had let her down again, especially after she had put forth so much effort to include him, was painful. Sarah explained that Lily had been too embarrassed to contact me herself. She felt bad about how she had treated me and feared that I would not want to hear from her. Sarah stated, "She sees what a mistake she made. She misses you so badly." I listened to Sarah's remarks with mixed emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. I had been correct about Tom all along. However, a larger part of me felt melancholy. Lily was sad because her biological father had let her down yet again. "I'm sorry for the anguish this has caused our family." I told Sarah, "I appreciate you telling me this, but the damage is done. I can't just pretend the last 6 months haven't happened." Sarah pleaded with me to rethink and give Lily another opportunity. But I remained firm. I added, "I'm not saying I'll never forgive Lily, but right now I need some time." She made her decision, and now we all have to deal with the repercussions. We concluded the call on a melancholy tone. I told Sarah she was free to return whenever she was ready, but I needed more time before I could consider recreating a connection with Lily. As I sit here writing this final update, I am still absorbing everything that has transpired. Part of me wants to reach out to Lily, soothe her, and assure her that everything will be fine. But a part of me is still hurting and resentful. I know some of you believe I'm being too harsh, that I should forgive and forget, but trust is a fragile thing that, once destroyed, is difficult to recover. I need time to heal, to choose whether and how I can move ahead from this. For now, I'm concentrating on myself. I'm seeing a therapist to work through my emotions, and I'm attempting to reconstruct my life without Lily in it. It's not easy, but I think it's vital. Thank you for your continued support along this journey. Your suggestions and insights have been invaluable. I'm not sure what the future contains, but I'm preparing to confront it with bravery and dignity. My fiancé demanded I put his family first, even at the cost of my sister's health. Now I'm reconsidering everything. Original post, October 25, 2023. Throwaway as my work friends are on my main and they don't know this is going on. Also, it is obligatory that this is on mobile, so spelling and grammar will be poor. This is a long one, but I'll try and keep it as short as possible. I, 28F, got engaged to my partner of 7 years, Rob, 29M, in May. Both sides of our family were really happy about this, and we had a big family meal 2 weeks after getting engaged. His brother lives 250 miles away and couldn't get here for that meal, so we decided to have a meal just for his family in late June when his brother would be back for the weekend. This weekend was arranged long before we got engaged, so he wasn't back just for the meal. Earlier this year, my sister Kim, 32F, got a serious eye infection that very quickly turned into an ulcer, which scarred her cornea and left it at a high risk of a perforation. She needed a corneal graft, but her surgeon was away for 4 weeks, so she was going to have to wait until he got back to have it. However, her eye didn't hold and it perforated the day I was supposed to be going to the family meal with R's brother. Kim's wife was at work and had her phone turned off, and our mom was away with our stepdad, so when Kim called me to let me know what was happening, I knew she would be at the hospital on her own. I immediately talked to my boss and he let me go early so Kim wasn't on her own. I texted Rob to let him know what was going on, and he texted me back to send Kim his love and to remind me about the meal that night. I ignored the comment about the meal as it was the last thing on my mind. Once I got to the hospital, I was taken back into a room where Kim was, to be greeted by 3 doctors and 2 nurses rushing around trying to help Kim. I was then informed that she needed to have an emergency operation to have her eye glued or else she would lose it. The problem was that they didn't have a surgeon at that hospital that could do it, and she needed to go to another hospital an hour and a half away. They asked if she would need transportation or if I could take her. I said I would take her. Once we got to the other hospital, we were told that she would be having the operation at 5:30 p.m. I knew then that I wouldn't make dinner and text Rob to let him know. He flipped out and basically told me to leave Kim at the hospital and have her wife pick her up after the op was done. At this point, I still hadn't been able to get a hold of Kim's wife. I told him that wasn't going to happen and that he was out of order to even ask me to do that. I then texted his mom and told her what was going on. She was really supportive and told me to stay with Kim and let her know how the op goes. A dinner can be rescheduled, Kim's health can't. I also spoke with his brother, who was equally understanding. I stayed with Kim, her operation was a success, and I got her back home about 9 p.m. Her wife had ordered some Chinese and offered me some, which I happily accepted as I hadn't eaten since lunch. With that, I didn't get home till about 11 p.m. and Rob was already asleep. Rob was very short with me for days after, and we ended up having a huge fight where he told me that I should have put his brother and family before Kim. He said he was embarrassed to go to the meal without me. I responded that I was embarrassed he thought I would put a meal before my sister's health. This led to another week of awkwardness between us before we finally sat down and we sorted it out. Or so I thought. 8 weeks ago Kim got her graft and so far everything is going really well with it. On Saturday his brother was here so we went out for dinner with his family. His family were all asking about how Kim was doing and I showed them a picture of the stitches in her eye. I thought that everything had gone really well until we got home and he got really angry saying that I shouldn't have brought up Kim's health issues and I shouldn't have shown them the picture. I argued that they'd asked about her and asked to see the picture. It ended with him telling me that I needed to put him and his family before Kim or else we weren't going to work. His family will come before mine once we are married so I should get used to it. I went upstairs and packed a bag. I'm now at my mum's house and he's been bombarding me with texts and calls since I left. I do love him, but I will never put his family above my own family's health. I feel like he's expecting me to spend every holiday with his family and put their wants above my family needs, which won't happen. I'm very close to my sister and my mum, that's not going to change. So I don't really know how to move forward or if I even want to. Has anyone experienced anything like this before? If so, how did you deal with it? TLDR. My fiancé got mad that I missed dinner with his family because my sister needed emergency surgery and I was the only one available to take her. He is now insisting that I put his family before my own. I don't know how to move forward with him. Edit. For some reason it won't let me do a full update post even on my own page, so I'm just going to add it to here. Thank you so much for everyone that commented. I replied to as many as I could but I read all of them. Warning, this is going to be longer than the original post. A lot has happened. TLDR. For those that just want a quick update, I left him and he's out of my house. His mum is seriously pissed at him and his brother has gone no contact with him for the foreseeable future. For those that want a longer version. Once I'd decided to end things with him, I knew that the main issue would be getting him out of my house. I own the house outright. My grandma died 5 years ago and left her house to my mum, who sold it and split the money between me and my sister. I then bought my house with that money about a year after she died. I got in touch with my stepdad's friend, who was a landlord the day after I wrote my original post, who then put me in touch with his solicitor. He didn't have time to see me in person that day, but we did have a phone call where he gave me my options. In the UK we have something called a Section 8 notice. This is a 14-day eviction notice and the solicitor said this would be the quickest way to get him out, however he could try and contest it if he wanted to, which would lead to court dates and could take months. I asked him to draw up the notice and date it for Friday, the next day. I'd already made the decision to end things with him after work on Friday, so that he could have the weekend to sort through his emotions before work on Monday. On Friday morning I texted Rob and asked him to meet with me at our local pub after work. He quickly agreed. Not only is the pub a public space, but my stepdad and a few of his work friends go in there every Friday after work for a few pints, so I knew he would be there to step in if I needed him. Thank you for suggesting this, Redditors. I also picked up the eviction notice on my lunch break, so I was ready to give it to him. Cost £250 but was worth it. When I got to the pub, Rob was already there and my stepdad was standing at the bar with his workmates. I sat down with Rob and got straight to the point. I told him that it was over. I couldn't be with someone who didn't give me any support when I was going through one of the scariest moments of my life and expected me to drop my family for him. It didn't matter what excuses he could come up with. I wasn't interested. I'd made up my mind and we were done. He stared at me in shock for what felt like an hour but was probably only a minute or so. He then started saying I couldn't be serious. We'd been together for 7 years and I was throwing it all away. I could never find another guy like him. I responded to the last comment with, I don't want a guy like you. That's why I'm ending it. I need someone who will support me when times get tough, not get annoyed that the world isn't bowing down to what he wants. I then handed him an envelope with the eviction notice in and my engagement ring. I told him I was giving him a few weeks to find a place and be out of my house. Then I stood up and walked over to my stepdad, who had bought me a much-needed drink, and stayed with him until my ex left, still looking in shock. I knew he wouldn't approach me whilst I was with my stepdad, as he has always been a little scared of him. This is obviously a very condensed version of what happened. Once I got back to my mum's house, I had one single text from him saying he wasn't moving out and was going to contest the eviction until I'd come to my senses and got back with him. We are not over, was how he ended the text. I just turned my phone off and decided to deal with the legal side of things on Monday. There was nothing else I could do. Saturday morning I woke up and turned my phone back on and had another text from him saying that he would move out if I paid him £10,000, as that's what he'd paid towards bills whilst he had lived at the house. He paid for half the electric, gas, Wi-Fi and Sky package. Note, the Sky package is only as expensive as it is because he has to have every sports channel known to man, so his half literally just paid for the sports channels. I'd already asked the solicitor about this though, and he'd assured me that I didn't owe him any money as he hadn't contributed to a mortgage or any renovations of the house, it was just general expenses. He also knew that I don't have £10,000 just lying around. Let's say I was irritated by this and decided to ring his mum to see if she could talk some sense into him. I'll call his mum Sandra to make it easier. She was appalled by what I told her and said she would speak to him. She called me back about an hour later and asked me to meet her at the house. Rob was on an away day to watch his football team play and wouldn't be back till about 10 p.m. so I knew he wasn't there. I met her at the house with Kim, and Sandra said that Rob's brother was on his way back home and they would have Rob out by the following afternoon. She hadn't even spoken to Rob, just his brother, but she promised he would be out. Sandra then asked me to walk her through the house showing her exactly what was his and what wasn't so he didn't take anything that didn't belong to him. The next morning I got a text from Rob calling me all the names under the sun for getting his mom and brother involved. I blocked him and a couple of hours later, Sandra texted me to let me know he was out and staying with her. I thanked her and she told me that she would like to stay in contact and I happily agreed to this. I went back to my house after work on Monday, changed the alarm code and my stepdad changed all the locks for me. My stepdad is also arranging for a friend of his to install cameras around the outside of the house. This will be done over the weekend. Sandra rang me on Tuesday asking if we could meet up as she had some things she wanted me to know. So we met for lunch that day. It was at this time that she told me her ex was a controlling a-hole who was incredibly selfish and the selfishness was what she had seen in Rob for so long. That's why she had commented on him being like his father, but she had hoped that was the extent of Rob's attitude and he hadn't picked up his dad's controlling behavior, which to be fair, he hadn't up until this whole episode. She had left Rob's dad after he had punched Rob's brother in the face when he was 14 and Rob was 10. He had never laid a hand on her or their sons before, but one time was enough and she left with the boys. To her knowledge her ex had never reached out to speak to Rob or his brother and they hadn't spoken to their father in years. I didn't know any of this, all I had been told was that their dad wasn't in the picture and hadn't been for a long time, but Sandra had thought I knew and that's why she hadn't told me before. However, she had found out on Sunday night that Rob was back in contact with his father and had been for the past year. His dad had been putting lots of thoughts into Rob's head about how he is the man of the house and his family is all that matters. This had fed into Rob's selfish tendencies and had amplified them tenfold. Sandra said that she had told him to find somewhere else to stay ASAP as she couldn't even look him in the face. Then Rob and his brother had a huge argument that ended with his brother telling him that as long as Rob is in touch with their dad, then he will have zero contact with him. Even going so far as to tell him to spend Christmas with their dad because Sandra is going to his house and Rob isn't welcome. When Sandra took Rob's brother's side in all this, Rob flew into a rage and said he would move in with his dad. He then left the house, but came back a couple of hours later looking like he'd been crying. Turns out, that his dad doesn't want him living with him and basically said he could be on the streets for all he cares. He's not putting a roof over a grown man's head. Sandra thinks that Rob is now starting to realize everything he has lost due to him listening to his dad and has seen his dad's true colors. Sandra is incredibly disappointed in him, but he's her son so she is trying to be there for him as best as she can. However, she still wants him out as she doesn't trust him anymore. His brother still won't have anything to do with him. She has also told him to stay the hell away from me as I don't need to be brought into this and he has promised her that he will. Only time will tell if that's true, but I do have him blocked on everything and if he turns up at the house I will just call the police to get rid of him. The more Sandra told me about what had been going on behind my back, the more resolute I became about wanting nothing to do with him. I never want to see him again, if I can help it. So all in all Rob's life is a shit show, but as long as he stays away from me then I don't care. I've been spending a lot of time with my sister and her wife as well and my mom and stepdad which has been great. I've never really been close to my stepdad, but this has brought us a lot closer together which has been one huge positive out of all this. I'm not exactly happy right now, but I'll get there. There's still a lot of feelings that I need to unpack and it will take time to move on from this whole situation. I don't think I will be dating for a while. I need to really get over all this and don't want to dump this on anyone else right now. For all those asking how Kim is doing, she's doing great. Had a hospital appointment on Monday and her consultant said her eye is healing, in his words, marvelously. So that's a relief. Thank you to everyone that reached out to me. I hope there won't be any need to update this again, so this should be my final update. For telling my ex that it's not my fault that he's homeless. November 26, 2023. So I 28 have posted on relationship advice before about my now ex 29M. The post and update is in my profile. But basically my ex-fiancé wanted me to put his family before mine even at the cost of my sister's health. I ended up breaking up with him over it and he was forced to move in with his mom, who then found out that he had been in touch with his abusive dad, who was twisting his view on how a relationship should work. Last I heard was that his mum was kicking him out as she would not have anyone in her house that was in contact with her ex, and that he had tried to go live with his dad, but his dad had refused. I was completely NC with him, so his mum was the one that had told me this. I'll call my ex Rob and ex-mum Sandra to make things easier. I hadn't heard from Rob in weeks, but yesterday he showed up at my house. I had the chain on my door, so opened it with that still attached. No way would I let him in. He basically told me that he had nowhere to live. His mum isn't speaking to him and his dad won't put a roof over a grown man's head, his words not mine. He asked if I would take him back or at least let him live with me. No way in hell would I get back with him, and getting him out the first time only went easy because his mum stepped in to help. He had threatened to take me to court, knowing that if he did it could take months to get him out, and then said he would only move if I gave him £10,000. I contacted his mum, who was furious about that, and she turned up with his brother and forced him out. I told him that there was zero possibility of him ever living with me again and that we were 100% over. He started shouting at me and calling me all sorts of names, so I threatened to call the police if he didn't leave and shut the door. I have cameras all over my house, so I caught everything he did and said on camera and saved it to a USB just in case. He then went crying to all our mutual friends and managed to get back to his mom. She called me and asked what happened. I told her, and she then informed me that she had put her house up for sale and was moving 300 miles away to be nearer her other son. She and Rob had a huge argument about this and she finally kicked him out. Since then he's been couch surfing, but with Christmas coming up, his friends aren't really happy with having him on their couches when they have kids and are meant to be enjoying the festive season. He's been kicked out of 3 friends' houses in 10 days. She told me I was right to refuse him, but I've since had other friends say that they feel sorry for them, and that I can just let him stay in my spare room until he's back on his feet. I then asked them to put him up, but they said they would but don't have room, and if they had a spare room like me then they would let him stay. My family and his are on my side, but I'm starting to doubt myself with what a couple of my friends have said. So Reddit, Aida? Edit. Just a quick edit as I'm going to bed. I've just spoken with the wife of one of Rob's friends and she's asked to meet me on my lunch break tomorrow. Apparently, Rob stayed with them for 2 nights before she kicked him out, and there's more going on than what I know of. She's going to tell me the full story tomorrow, but told me that I shouldn't let him anywhere near me and that he's staying in Airbnb so he does at least have a roof over his head right now. I'll try to update after I've spoken to her. Update, November 27, 2023. So I posted yesterday about my ex turning up at my house wanting me to let him move back in with me. I said no, but a couple of friends thought I should let him and that messed with my head. Rob is my ex. A few people told me to change my lock, etc. I did that and changed my alarm code, as well as my stepdad got his friend to put up 4 cameras around my house. I'm also going to start shutting the gate so that no one can walk up to the house without ringing the bell there first. I put in an edit that I was going to meet with one of Rob's friends' wives for lunch today, and I have to say that it was informative for sure. I'll call her Nat, 30F, and her husband Zach, 29M. So I went to meet her on my lunch break at a cafe near my work. It's a place that a lot of my co-workers go to, and I know the staff there as well. A few Redditors thought that she might bring Rob with her, so I wanted it to be somewhere I feel comfortable and have backup if needed. Turns out that I didn't need to bother about that. When I got to the cafe, Nat was there on her own. I grabbed some lunch and a drink and sat with her. We went through the usual small talk before she started telling me what had been going on. Rob rang Zach on Thursday morning saying he had nowhere to go and could he stay with them for a few days. Zach spoke to Nat and they agreed he could stay in their guest room. Rob went to their house after work and they had a long talk where Rob told them he has a flat lined up, but can't move in till January. Zach and Nat agreed to let him live with them until January as long as he followed some basic rules and paid for his own food. The rules were things like, no bringing women back there, and if he went out drinking he had to be quiet when he got back so he didn't wake their daughter who's 6. He agreed to all this and paid for a Chinese for them all that night. The next day after work Rob went to meet his dad in the pub for a few pints. When Zach and Nat went to bed Rob still wasn't home. They were woken up at about 2 in the morning by Rob arguing with a woman. Apparently, Rob had met this woman in a bar, took her back to Zach and Nat's house, got his pleasure and then told her to get dressed and fuck off once he was done. She had gotten angry, which started an argument where Rob was saying some horrific shit to her. Nat took the woman downstairs and got her a taxi, while Zach stayed upstairs arguing with Rob. Once Nat had got rid of the woman she went back upstairs and tried to calm Zach and Rob down. At this point Rob decided to take out his frustrations on Nat, calling her a bitch and telling her to do something useful and make him a sandwich before bursting out laughing like he'd made the funniest joke ever. This made Zach lose it and pinned Rob to the wall by his throat. Side note, Rob isn't a fighter at all, whereas Zach was an amateur boxer in his youth and can handle himself well. Nat managed to get Zach to let him go and Rob was shoved in the guest room and told to sleep off the alcohol. It's a miracle that Nat's daughter didn't wake up during this. The next morning Nat got their daughter ready and went to her mom's after telling Zach to get Rob out of their house. Zach agreed, and after Nat left he woke Rob up and told him to pack his shit and leave. Rob tried to apologize and begged to stay, but Zach was having none of it and kicked him out. Going off the timing, I think he left there and came straight to my house. On Sunday Zach texted Rob to meet up so that they could speak and they met up in a pub. Zach has been friends with Rob since they were 11 and has never seen him act like he has been doing, so he wanted to find out what was really going on. He managed to finally get the truth out of Rob. Basically, Rob has been in contact with his dad for a lot longer than he told us. By this point it's over 2 years. His dad is a raging misogynist that believes a woman's place is in the kitchen and bedroom. A man's place is to rule the house and be waited on hand and foot, as well as deciding who can and can't be in their lives. He's been dripping this poison into R's ear and it's really taken a hold of him. Zach told Nat that he just doesn't recognize Rob anymore. Rob wants to start living his life the way his father has told him he should. When Zach pointed out that Rob's dad is 62, living in a shitty one-bedroom flat, not had a real relationship since R's mom left him, has no friends, his family doesn't speak to him, and that he's the type of guy that when he walks into a pub people finish their pants so they can leave and get away from him, Rob was furious. He told Zach that his dad is just misunderstood. Zach responded that people understood his dad and that's why they stayed away from him. He's toxic. This pretty much ended their conversation and Rob left. Zach did find out that Rob does have a flat lined up for January, so that was true, and that he's found Airbnb he can stay until the flat is ready at a minimal cost. Zach and Nat have also decided to go NC with Rob as they don't need that toxicity around them, but especially not around their daughter. A few Redditors had said it sounded like Rob was on drugs, so I asked Nat what she thought and she doesn't think so but can't be sure. She and Zach think that Rob is just so far under his dad's thumb now that he's completely changed as a person. He believes that everything his dad says is gospel. She did let me know that Rob has a burner IG account that he is using to check on my IG, and I immediately made my account private. He had said something about seeing me waste money on a stupid amount of Christmas presents when I couldn't even help him out with Zach on Sunday. I'd been to a Christmas market on Saturday afternoon and had posted pics on IG. All of this just made my resolve stronger that he will not be getting anywhere near my house again. It also made me realize that I don't have any feelings for him anymore other than frustration at how he's acting and some sadness at how far he's fallen from the man I once knew. I thought that hearing he had another woman in his bed would annoy me, but there was just nothing. I couldn't have cared less. I thanked Nat for the info and we agreed to keep in touch. We won't be as close as we were when I was with Rob, but it feels good to have someone who knows the entire situation and has seen Rob's behavior with his own eyes. There were also some Redditors that told me to ditch the friends that had told me to let him stay with me. Unfortunately, I can't ditch them completely as they're part of the friend group and that would just cause unnecessary drama, but I will be keeping my distance from them and only talking to them when part of the group. I'm currently with my sisters and we are going to watch a Christmas film to get us in the mood to decorate all our houses this weekend, so I will be on and off for the next few hours if anyone has any questions. Thanks for the votes and giving me some perspective. Reddit isn't all bad. For anyone that's still around. December 19th, 2023. Still have people reaching out to see if I'm okay. A few hated me just using initials, so R is Rob. I really hoped that I wouldn't have to update again, but I've just had a call from one of Rob's friends and it looks like he's going to be spending Christmas in prison. Apparently, he went out on Saturday night with his dad and they got into an argument which turned physical. Rob isn't a fighter, however he is bigger and stronger than his dad, and it ended with his dad falling backwards and hitting his head off a wall, knocking him unconscious. The staff in the pub called the police and an ambulance, but Rob left before they got there. Rob's dad had to go to hospital, where he still is. I'm unsure of his exact injuries, but they're not life-threatening. He must also be awake as he is pressing charges against Rob, however they won't keep him in unless absolutely essential at this time of year. Rob was arrested on Sunday morning at the B&B he's been staying at and had to appear in magistrate's court on Monday. Due to him not having a fixed address right now and the fact that his dad is still in hospital, he has been remanded on a Section 18 with intent. Unless he can find a permanent address to go to, then he won't be getting out until his trial at Crown Court. I know his mom is already with his brothers over 250 miles away, so I don't think she will be able to help right now. Finding this out has actually given me a sense of peace right now. I've been trying to ignore it, but the chance of him turning up and spoiling Christmas has been at the back of my mind ever since he turned up at my house. I'm hoping he stays in over Christmas so that I can just relax. OOP on Section 18 in her area. OOP, Section 18 is an assault charge. A Section 18 with intent is the next level up and is classed as intending to and causing grievous bodily harm to someone. I've been told that if found guilty, then it's usually a multiple-year prison sentence. Another mini update. December 23, 2023. I went round to N&Z, hereby known as Nat and Zach, to drop off a present for their daughter, a bottle of Bell's for Zach and a bottle of Prosecco for Nat for Christmas, and had a cup of tea with them whilst they filled me in on what's going on. Rob will be in over Christmas, but will likely get out early January. His lawyer is trying to get the charges reduced from Section 18 with intent to a Section 20. I only found out today that a Section 18 with intent is one step down from attempted murder and you're looking at double digits in prison if you get found guilty. Section 20 is a lot less severe and is usually a 2-year suspended sentence for first-time offenders, which he is. His lawyer has said that if he pleads guilty to Section 20 then CPS will lower the charges to get this one over and done with ASAP, as the courts are ridiculously backed up in the UK right now and prisons are full. Zach went to the B&B he was staying at and got Rob's stuff, which is now sitting in his garage as one last favor to Rob, Zach's words. He can't get in touch with me without my consent whilst he is locked away. The prison literally has to ring me and ask if it is okay that I get put on his approved call list, and only then is he allowed to ring me, which won't be happening. I've also spoken to his mom, who has basically washed her hand of him for the time being. She thinks that he needs to learn his lesson and maybe spending Christmas in a cell will teach him how much he's lost the plot. She has spoken to him and said that he's now saying the right things, but only time will tell if he means them. He is talking about moving to be near his brother to get away from their dad, so maybe he has seen the light. His brother has refused to go onto his call list, so Rob can't contact him, so I don't know how that will work. As for his dad, he is still in hospital with a broken hip and has had to have surgery to fix it. The broken bone and head injury is why the charges are so high right now. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, knowing he can't ruin my Christmas. I'm just about to pack everything into the car and go and stay at my mum's until January 2nd, but thought I'd finish the year off letting everyone who's helped me and supported me through this know what's going on. Merry Christmas to everyone that celebrates it and hope everyone is doing well. Final update, April 13th, 2024. Hi all, sorry it's been a while since my last update, but I wanted everything to be finished before I update it again. Rob spent Christmas on remand in prison. He didn't get out until the second week of January, and that was only because his mum agreed to let him stay with her again. He had his plea hearing the first week of February, where he pleaded guilty to a Section 20 assault. He then had to wait until last week to get his sentencing court date. I didn't know how much actually goes into sentencing. They had to get a victim impact statement, a pre-sentencing report from probation, statements from his mum and brother. His barrister even reached out to me to give a statement saying that we had broken up and I'd asked him to leave the house. He used our breakup as an extenuating circumstance, saying that because of the breakup of our relationship and him losing his home, that had seriously impacted his mental health. The statements from his mom and brother also confirmed that he had lived in an abusive home when he was young, so he claimed he had PTSD because of that. These were all read out at his sentencing. He was going to get 3 years, but the judge knocked time off for pleading guilty and for mitigating circumstances. That left him with a 16-month sentence that was suspended for 18 months. As part of the conditions for his release, he isn't allowed anywhere near his dad, he has to go to counseling for his supposed PTSD, and he isn't allowed to drink alcohol. He even has an ankle monitor that tests his sweat every half an hour for alcohol and will alert probation if he gets a positive result. Luckily for him, his boss has let him go and work at their main location in the city that's half an hour away from here, and probation was happy for him to live there as well. He moved into a flat there this week, so I don't have to worry about running into him. I haven't spoken to him at all, and I don't want to either. He has tried reaching out through a couple of friends, but they've respected my decision and told him to move on with his life. However, I did speak to his mum yesterday and she said that she thinks he's depressed, but so far he's doing okay. She's the one I got all of this information from. It's a strange mix of emotion for me towards him, as I still care on some level, just not enough to keep him in my life. I know I need to keep him away from me, as I can never see him like I did at this time last year. It's crazy to think that it's only been a year since we got engaged. So much has happened. Other than those mixed emotions, I'm doing well. I've been hanging out with my sister and her wife a lot more, as well as catching up with friends. I'm still working at the same place and I don't see that changing anytime soon. For the people asking about my sister, she's doing good. She had a setback last month, but she seems to be over that now and has just been approved to have some form of newish stem cell treatment at the UK's biggest eye hospital. Which is fab news, She tried to explain it to me, but it involved them taking her blood and putting it into her eye, which grossed me out, so I told her to stop. However, because she's my sister, she then sent me pictures of what they do and Mum had to step in and tell her to stop. No matter how old we get, I don't think we will ever stop trying to annoy each other. So all in all, I think we're all moving on with life. Unless something big happens, then this should be my last post. I really want to thank everyone for their kind words and support. This has restored my faith that there are still good people out there. New update, June 30th, 2024, 2 months later. Hi all, I really hoped I wouldn't have to come back, but I've had several DMs on this account saying that a TikTok video is claiming that I'm back with my ex. I don't have TikTok, so I haven't seen it, but that's 100% not true. I haven't seen or spoken to him since my last update. As far as I'm aware, he's still living in the city half an hour away and is doing okay. I'm not really interested, to be honest. Rob's mom has accepted an offer on her house and has moved in with his brother until she can finalize the purchase of her house and find a flat she likes. Everyone else is doing well. My sister is the same and her eye is still healing. She's got some new glasses and says her vision is now nearly back to normal, so that's good. My sister and 7 other family and friends went out to Germany for England's first game, which was a lot of fun. Other than that, I've just been working and finding my new normal. Please don't listen to anything said about this on TikTok, YouTube, or anywhere else. I will not be getting back with Rob. That ship has sailed off the edge of a cliff. Relevant comments. Has Rob reached out to OOP? OOP. He was informed that I didn't want to speak to him and wanted to be left alone, and he respected that, thankfully. I just want us both to move on now.